السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته للمرة الثالثة يا جماعة. إن شاء الله يضبط هالمرة. خلينا نشوف الوضع. إنه البطش حاليا بجيف بيزوس. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا. هنشوف وضعه. الوضع عندكم تقولون للحين تمام. اوكي. الحين الامور تمام. راح احط كومنتاتكم شي، كل واحد يكتب كومنت راح يطلع بالفيديو كذي. حلو، كل شيء تمام، كله تمام تمام تمام. الحمد لله الحمد لله. نأتي الحين حق الاخوان. يا اخوي انتو يا
I'm also concerned that given Amazon's allowance of counterfeit goods on its marketplace, especially counterfeit goods from China.
هذه جلسة الاستماع بين الكونغرس وبين كبار شركات التقنية جوجل، فيسبوك، أمازون وأبل. فالكونغرسمن والكونغرس وومن باطشين فيهم صح. طبعا أكثر اثنين فيسبوك جوجل. ما طافكم واحدة من السناتورز شنو سوت مارك زوكربيرج قبل شوي؟ ما كنت لا هي أشغل هذا ولا هذا. حلو. اي اكل حبيبي اكل. اي اكل وانا اشرب معك. طشوا فيه. تقول له كم برنامج بقت؟ احنا ما بقنا في منافسين. اخوي خلصني كم 5 والله ما اذكر. زين قول لي عطني كذي 5 اقل. زين 50 اقل. ما والله ما يصير تقولين كذي عن اسكت عمي. في واحد كان معاهم هذا الحين ترى صار لهم تقريبا 4 ساعات استجواب، مو جلسة استماع. في واحد كان هم ضيف معاهم موجود ما نسأل ولا سؤال بالأربع ساعات. أوه تيم كوك أخيرا تحكى.
Thank you, Mr. Pichai.
Congressman,
بس
I'll share your concern in this area.
هذا طبعا انبطش فيه. تمسخر هذا والله تمسخر مسكين.
So I really don't want to even engage with my office.
طبعا أكثر اثنين ماسكينهم الحين قاعدين يجزرون عليهم فيسبوك وجوجل. بغض النظر يا جماعة عن اللي قاعد يصير واللي تسمعونه بايقين حاطين ترى هذا كله قاعد يصير عشان الانتخابات هاي بالطريق. حتى مساء واحد عطاه اياه من الاخر، عطاه مال جوجل من الاخر.
Mr. Zuckerberg.
I agree. We wouldn't tolerate this, and if we found anything like this, we would also terminate any relationship.
And Mr. Bezos.
Yes, I agree completely.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I now recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Mr. Buck for that excellent line of questioning and for the upcoming legislation. I look forward to joining that. We want, you know, in the 19th century, we had the robber barons. In the 20th century, we got the cyber barons. And we want to make sure that the extraordinary power and wealth that you've been able to amass is not used against the interests of democracy and human rights
يعني
around the
تخيل
world,
طبعا ليش قاعد يسوي
and,
شيء مثل ما قلت لكم
not
عشان
against the
الانتخابات جايه
interests of the free
بالطريق.
market at home. So,
واكثر
Mr.
اثنين راح
Bezos,
يلعبون
let me turn to
دور
you.
كبير بالانتخابات الامريكيه
I'm
فيسبوك
interested in the
وجوجل.
role that you play as a
الاعلانات
gatekeeper.
الكامبينز
A lot
الاشياء
of
هذه.
consumers want to know when the HBO Max
اي شيء الحين
app
قاعد
will be
يقولون عن
available
مكافحه
on
الاحتكار
your
وانه
Fire
يحطوا
device, and I understand that
كله كلام فاضي،
negotiations
لان
are
كل
ongoing,
الشركات عندهم كذي. هذه
but
سياسه
that,
كل
your
اي شركه
company is
بالدنيا
not only
سياستها
asking
احتكار،
for
انها هي تبي
financial
تمسك
terms,
السوق.
but also for content from Warner Media. Is that right, and is that a fair way to proceed? In other words, is it fair to use your gatekeeper status role in the streaming device market to promote your position as a competitor in the video streaming market with respect to content?
I'm not familiar with the details of those negotiations.
Jeff
As you said, they're
Bezos.
underway right now. I predict
أي
that the companies
يعني
will
هذا
eventually
يمكن
come to
سؤال
an
رقم،
agreement. And I
والله
think
ما
this is
أذكر سؤال
kind of,
رقم كم.
two large companies
بس
negotiate agreement. It's kind of normal case of
Right.
ولا السؤال
Here's
شفته
why I
جاوب
pursue it precisely
جاوب
because
يعني.
it is a large
أنا
company.
I'm not
and in a
sure.
way,
أنا ما أدري.
they
ما كنت
stand in
موجود.
for
ما أذكر.
hundreds of thousands of much smaller
ما أدري هو
companies
شنو
who are
يعني
even
ليش
in a
رئيس
more
الشركة.
disadvantageous position with respect to negotiating with you. I guess the general proposition then you can speak to if you don't know the details of this, which is it okay to negotiate not just for financial terms in having someone be part of your fire unit.
طبعا تكلموا مع فيسبوك عن انه شلون شرى واتساب، شلون شرى انستغرام، شلون هدد اللي طبعا ما سنتر والله بساعة طافك وقاعد تسأله تقول له صدق انت هددت صاحب شركة انستغرام وهددت مال سناب شات ما رد عليه، لا احنا ما نسوي كذي ما ادري شنو.
what you're going to get in exchange for the amount of money. That is a very fundamental way that business works.
Do you see at least to outsiders that would look like a structural conflict of interest, like you're using your control over access to people's living rooms, essentially. You're using that in order to obtain leverage in terms of getting creative content that you want. And are you essentially converting power in one domain into power in another domain where it doesn't belong?
I think what I should do is offer to get you information. If you, I'll get it to your office for you because I'm not familiar enough with this, and I could imagine that there would be scenarios if we're just talking in the abstract where it would be inappropriate.
طيبين أهلا وسهلا يوسف العرب أهلا وسهلا. بسبب فيسبوك فاز ترامب بالانتخابات.
I want to talk about in emerging markets smart homes, and I want to start with the hub of the smart home, smart speakers. Does Amazon price the Echo device below cost?
Not its list price, but it's often on promotion, and sometimes when it's on promotion, it may be below cost. Yes.
Well, several other companies did tell us, in fact, that Amazon is pricing Echo devices way below cost, making it nearly impossible for them to compete. And aggressively discounting Alexa-enabled speakers as a strategy to own the smart home. Like many markets we've heard about today, smart speakers with voice assistants like Alexa, along with the myriad of smart home appliances that Alexa can interact with, make up the next ecosystem or platform for tech companies
ليش تبيعون أليكسا بسعر أقل من التكلفة؟
Would you say the smart home market for which the Echo Ring security system and other smart devices operate is a winners take all market? Yes or no?
No, I wouldn't, especially if we're able to succeed at what we want, which is we would like our vision for this is that smart home speakers should answer to different wake words.
Well, when considering the acquisition of
a case-by-case basis, and I think in that, just to, I think it's important, if we could achieve that, then I think
قول إنه يهتم إنه نشوف يعني السمارت هومز إنه لازم يعتمد على أكثر من سيستم يعني مو على سيستم واحد. إحنا ما قاعد نسوي كذي ما قاعد نبي نتحكم بهذا الموضوع. قاعد يقول زين ليش قاعد تبيعون أنت أليكسا ليش قاعد تنباع بأقل من سعر التكلفة؟ قول والله لأن كانت بروموشنز يعني إحنا وايد نسوي بروموشنز فعشان كذي البروموشن يكون أقل من سعر التكلفة.
in almost any business, and it's one of the primary things that one would look at in an acquisition.
الفكرة كلها إن أنت ما تبي منافسين، يعني المنافسين ما يقدر يبيع بأقل من السعر اللي أنت تبيع.
Sometimes it's a talent acquisition. But the most common case is market position, that the company has traction with customers, they've built a service, maybe they were the first mover. There could be any number of reasons why they have that market position, but that's a very common reason to acquire a company.
Well, once a company becomes dominant in a market, it can favor its own products and services. Alexa-enabled smart speakers make up over 60% of the smart speaker market. Mr. Bezos, when I ask Alexa to play my favorite song, Prime Music is the default music player. Is that right?
I think that's true if you're a Prime member, yes.
And a New York Times report found that when users say, Alexa, buy batteries, Alexa responds, would you like to buy AA Amazon basic batteries? So has Alexa ever been trained to favor Amazon products when users shop by voice?
The time of the gentleman has expired, but the witness may answer the question.
I don't know if it's been trained in that way. I'm sure there are cases where we do promote our own products.
حبيبي انت رئيس الشركة ما يصير تقول ما ادري شلون تشتغل شركتي. المشكلة يعني انت مو رئيس شركة، انت صاحب شركة، انت اللي سويت امازون، ما يصير تقول ما اعرف. اخر سؤال قاعد يقول له انت هل تخلون الكسا يعني اذا بيشتري واحد عن طريق الصوت ان تفضل منتجات امازون على المنتجات الثانيه، فما جاوب. قال ما ادري والله.
And just as one example would be Tsinghua University, where Jeff Dean, who is the head of Google AI, served on the
فيسبوك راح يلغون اعلانات والانتخابات، والله هذا اللي مساع قالوه، بس يعني كلهم متفقوا على هذا الشيء. بس انت تدري كل انتخابات بامريكا ايش كثر يطلعون فيسبوك وجوجل من الانتخابات، بس اي انتخابات بالدنيا ايش كثر الشركات تطلع فلوس من وراهم. بس فكرة انه والله ما راح ندش انتخابات ونخسر الملايين، هذا كلام فاضي.
real market dominance. On December 11th, you testified to the Judiciary Committee, and in response to a question from my colleague Zoe Lofgren about search, you said, we don't manually intervene on any particular search result. But leaked memos obtained by the Daily Caller show that that isn't true. In fact, those memos were altered December 3rd, just a week before your testimony, and they describe a deceptive news blacklist and a process for developing that blacklist approved by Ben Gomes, who leads search with your company, and also something called a fringe ranking, which seems to beg the question, who gets to decide what's fringe? And
قاعد يقولوا تتدخلون انتم يدويا في مسألة اختيار البحث والإنسان لما يبحث جوجل. هل تتدخلون يدويا بالموضوع؟ وقبل سنتين كنا أو شغلة كذي إن أنتم قلتوا لا إحنا ما نتدخل كذي.
It continues, this watch list is maintained and stored by Eris
فقاعد يعدد له عدد الحالات اللي صار فيها تدخل يدوي.
Sort of does beg the question who these enforcement specialists are. Access to the listing can also be shared on a need-to-know basis to enforce or enrich the policy violations. The investigation of the watch list is done in the tool Athena, the Ares manual review tool. So you said to Congresswoman Lofgren that there was no manual review tool, and then your documents indicate that there is a manual review tool. So help us understand the inconsistency.
Congressman, there are two parts to this. In general, we algorithmically approach our search results. We have robust policies to do so, and we test it both with user feedback and we use raters to validate. Last year alone, we ran over 300,000 experiments and launched around 3,000 improvements to search. And we don't manually tune. The question last time was in the context of, is there someone behind the curtain, manually tuning an individual search result? We don't. We generally approach it algorithmically. We, however, in order to comply with the law in every country we operate in, for example, there may be an actor or a website identified as interfering in elections. And we then have to put that site on a list so that doesn't appear in our search results against queries. So other examples would be violent extremism.
And is that done manually, Mr. Pichai? That process you described, is that done manually?
And we could get reports from law enforcement agencies. We are complying.
It's
a known DMCA-based.
There is either a manual component or there is not a manual component. Which is it?
جاوب.
for creating those lists, that process can involve manual portions.
Okay, great. Well, that is sort of the concern that I have. You've now said something different today than you said to Ms. Lofgren, because you've confessed that there is a manual component to the way in which you blacklist content. And it seems to be no coincidence that it's sites like Gateway Pundit, The Western Journal, American Spectator, Daily Caller, and Breitbart that receive the ire or the negative treatment as a consequence of your manual tooling. And it also seems noteworthy that whistleblowers at your own company have spoken out. You said that one of the reasons you maintain this manual tool is to stop election interference. I believe it is in fact your company that is engaging in election interference. And it's not just my view. Mike Wacker came out and was a whistleblower in the manual blacklist targets.
شوف ابل موضوعها كان فكرة للاب ستور انه ليش ياخذون 30% من الفلوس والديفلوبرز وهالسوالف. سألوا اول شيء بعدين بس خلاص انتهى الدور وما ما له معنى. جيف بيزوس تقريبا صار ساعة وشيء ولا فتش حلجة، ما سألوا ولا سؤال. الحين رد كذي عطوه. مال جوجل الحين نرجع على موضوع جوجل. الحين قاعد يقول له في تدخل يدوي انتم قاعد تسوونه بالبحث بنتائج البحث اللي تطلع. فقال له انت في جلسة سابقة تكلمت عن هذا الموضوع وقلت انه ما في تدخل يدوي، والحين انت قاعد تقول انه في تدخل يدوي في بعض الحالات اذا كان في عندنا والله هذا يتحكم بالانتخابات او شغله كذي. فانت قاعد تاكد موضوع انه في عندكم تدخل يدوي حق البحث او نتائج البحث اللي تطلع. ممكن في بعض الاماكن بس انه دام انه في تدخل معناته انه تقدرون ان انتم تغيرون باماكن ثانيه.
That Google specifically goes after are those who support President Trump, who hold a conservative viewpoint, and he left your company in 2019 because he was speaking out against these outraged mobs. So can you see how with your power individuals, some of the same individuals that Project Veritas has exposed as labeling people as terrorists who say make America great again, who support the president, that in fact can be the very election interference that we're concerned about, and that you're using your market dominance in search to accomplish that election interference.
Congressman, with respect, I strongly disagree with that characterization. We don't approach this work with any political viewpoint. We do that to comply with law, known copyright violations, very in narrow circumstances.
يعني يقول إن في عندهم مواقع بأمريكا بعض الحالات إذا هي مؤيدة حق ترامب والسياسات مالتهم. فأنتم ما تعطونهم. ما تعطونهم الرانكينج العالي بالنتائج البحث اللي تطلع لما الواحد يبحث عنهم. دائما تعطونهم نيجاتيف.
I'm sorry, may I be recognized for unanimous consent?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just given the productivity of our discussion, I'd request that we be permitted a third round of questions.
Without objection. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Nadler.
Yeah. You know, the documents prove it. The news and journalism industry in this country are an economic freefall.
والله ما أدري
Over 200 counties in America no
بس
longer have a
كرفتته
local
حلوة
newspaper.
صراحة.
And tens of thousands of journalists have been laid off in recent years. The reason journalism is in freefall.
أبو جوجل ينحشر بالمقابلات وهو ومارك زوكربيرغ. مارك زوكربيرغ مساء طاف والله سووا فيه.
It is Google and Facebook that increasingly profit.
والله بطشت فيه بطش.
Publishers have told us that
كم
Google
شركة
and Facebook maintain their dominance
نسخت؟
in these markets.
وما نسخنا احنا متابع. كم شركة نسخت؟ كم شركة هددت؟
Mr. Zuckerberg. In 2015, Facebook reported high and quickly growing rates of video viewership on its platform. Based on these metrics, news publishers fired hundreds of journalists, choosing instead to boost their video.
طلال بالنسبة حق تويتر مو موجود لأن الجلسة هذه حق منع الاحتكار. يعني تويتر ما في عنده نفس اللي قاعد يسوونه أمازون وفيسبوك وأبل وجوجل في عملية احتكار السوق. فعشان كذي يعني هي مو معاهم.
Video division. In 2018, it was discovered that Facebook had inflated these metrics and had known about the inaccuracies several years before Facebook publicly disclosed this. Mr. Zuckerberg, did you know that these metrics were inflated before they were publicly released?
Congressman, no, I did not, and we regret that mistake and have put in place a number of other
وعليكم
measures
السلام
since
أهلا
then to
وسهلا
make sure that we...
And do you realize the harm that this caused journalists across the country?
Congressman, I certainly know how
Hey,
important it is that the
Fridays.
metrics that we report are accurate, and
TGI.
we put in place additional measures to make sure that we can audit those.
And what do you have to say to the journalists who lost their jobs because of Facebook's deception?
Well, Congressman, I disagree with that characterization and also your description of what...
Reclaiming my time. Google, meanwhile, maintains its dominance.
هل جوجل أثر على تفنيش أو فقد وظائف للصحفيين بسبب اللي أنتوا قاعد تسوونه؟ كونغرس واللف والدور وما شنو.
Does Google use that data for its own purposes, either in advertising or to develop and refine its algorithms?
Mr. Chairman, we do use data to improve our products and services for our users.
شفتوا ملاحظين يا جماعة
Anytime we do it, we believe in giving users choice, control and transparency. We make it very clear and we give them simplified settings.
بزنس شوي عطوه على سالفة إنه شنو قاعد يسوي بالسمول بزنسز. أنا بس بشوف يعني أبل شنو موقعها من الإعراب بالموضوع هذا كله.
Data in general to improve our products and services, and we do use data to show ads, but we give users the choice. They can turn ads personalization on or off.
Hey?
Now this obviously the use of this data from all these companies gives you a tremendous advantage over them and over any competitor. Does the ability to make money in any way affect Google's algorithm in terms of what news appears in a typical user's search result?
احنا ما ناخذ عشان نسوي دعايات، ما ناخذ بيانات العملاء عشان نسوي دعايات، عشان نحسن خدماتنا.
We don't take into account commercial relationship that we have.
Okay. But Facebook and Google have gravely threatened journalism in the United States. Reporters have been fired, local newspapers have been shut down, and now we hear that Google and Facebook are making money over what news they let the American people see. This is a very dangerous situation, and unfortunately, my time is expired and I have to yield back.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I now recognize.
جوجل وفيسبوك خربوا يعني منظومة الصحافة تقريبا، يعني فنشوا صحفيين، سكروا جرايد بسبب يعني الأشياء اللي هم قاعدين يسوونها وطريقة عملهم.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to pick up where I left off. Mr. Pichai, there are writing groups that are going unchecked with the posting of what I would contend is very violent video. Yesterday I was sent a YouTube video about doctors discussing hydrochloroquine and discussing the not dangers of children returning to school. And when I clicked on the link, it was taken down. And then I was sent a different link on YouTube, and it was taken down. I just checked again just to make sure, and it says that this video has been removed for violating YouTube's community guidelines. How can doctors giving their opinion on a drug that they think is effective for the treatment of COVID-19 and doctors who think it's appropriate?
مثل ما قلت لكم اللي قاعدين على اليمين ربع ترامب، قاعد يسأله سؤال من أسئلة هذيل ملوت مؤامرة نظرية المؤامرة وكذي، فقاعد يسأله إن في دكاترة طالعين قاعد يقولون إن يعني عن مخاطر الكوفيد وشلون نتعامل معاه، يعني مو بذاك الأهمية ورايهم يعني. فطقيت على الفيديو طلع لي إن هذا الفيديو يخالف صلاحياته whatever اللي قاعد يعني انتهاك المعلومات المغلوطة اللي قاعد يقدمها حق الناس. فيعني على أي سبب أنتوا شلتوا الفيديو اللي دكاترة قاعدين يقولون رأيهم في موضوع أو بتخصصهم يعني.
For children to return back to school,
إن لازم ياهل يردوا المدرسة مرة ثانية.
When all of these videos of violence is all posted on YouTube.
أنا ليش شلتوا هذا والباجي والطق وهذا كله موجود ثاني؟
We believe in freedom of expression, and there is a lot of debate on YouTube about effective ways to deal with COVID. We allow robust debate, but in the area during a pandemic, we look to local health authorities. So for example, in the US, it would be CDC for guidelines around medical misinformation in a narrow way, which could cause harm in the real world. And so for example, if there is aspects of a video, and if it explicitly states something could be a proven cure, and that doesn't meet CDC guidelines, you know,
it's free expression of speech, and you have these doctors who are giving their opinion as doctors, and I don't understand why YouTube and therefore Google thinks it's appropriate to silence physicians and their opinion of what can help and cure people with COVID-19. I'm going to switch quickly to Mr. Zuckerberg. I think at this point it's fairly obvious that technology platforms have been stifling conservative news and opinions. You employ a panel of
والله اللي تو صار ما يعني ما تدري تصف مع منو، تصف مع هذا مال الكونغرس، تصف مع جوجل. صراحة اثنينهم قاعد يقولون كلام صح. يعني واحد قاعد يقول لك ان انت عندك الحين free of speech، حرية التعبير، اي واحد يقول رايه. ليش تحجر على راي هذا وتخلي راي هذا؟ كلامه صح. دام ان انت عندك حرية راي، خلاص خلي الناس تقول، سواء كان صح غلط خلي الناس تقول ويردون على بعض. ورد مال جوجل يقول لك احنا الحين في جائحة، احنا الحين في وضع وباء وانتشار المرض في العالم، فاحنا قاعد نمشي على السلطات الصحية شنو قاعد تقول ونتقيد فيه يعني نمشي عليه. فلما يطلع لنا واحد يقول كلام غير اللي قاعدين يقولونه السلطات الصحية، فمن حقنا ان احنا نشيل هذه المعلومات عشان الناس ما تتأثر فيها. ايضا كلامه صح، بس تصف مع منو؟ ما الحين لف على مال فيسبوك.
Content moderators. Can you explain how Facebook chooses who these moderators are?
Thanks, Congressman. We do hire a lot of people around the world to work on safety and security. Our team is more than 30 or 35,000 people working on that now. We certainly try to do this in a way that is
30,000 يشتغلون على السكيورتي بفيسبوك.
For all ideas. I don't think we build a social product with the goal of giving people a voice if you don't believe that people being able to express a wide variety of things is ultimately valuable for the world. And we try to make sure that our policies and our operations
ليه يتدخل في شغل الصحة؟
Is there an ideological diversity amongst the content moderators?
هذه النقطة. يعني هل أنت تأيد أن الواحد يقول اللي يقوله، ولا لازم نمسك الآراء اللي تخالف الشيء اللي متعارف أو اللي الناس تقول؟ يعني هنا الجدال.
I don't think we choose to hire them on the basis of an ideology. They're hired all over the world. There's certainly a bunch in the US. There's diversity.
والله خالد ما تقدر تقول كلامه صحيح، لأن حتى مال الكونغرس كلامه صحيح. إنه لما يقول لك والله أنت الحين قلت رأيك وأنا قلت رأيي، الناس المفروض تحدد منو اللي تبي تصدق كلامي صح ولا كلامك صح. فليش أنت مو تقول حرية التعبير؟ خلاص خل مثلا اللي يقول لك الأرض مسطحة، خلاص خله يقول الأرض مسطحة. تطلع ناس تكذب كلامه إذا هو كان كلامه خاطئ. فيعني بس أنا معك صح، إنه يعني بظروف الصحة وبخاف على صحتي، يعني المفروض إنه أوقف مع الصح.
Have any bias in what we do, and we wouldn't tolerate it if we discovered that.
So you don't specifically hire, say, conservative moderators and Democrat or liberal moderators so that there's a balance in your content moderators?
Congressman, in terms of the 30 to 35,000 people or more at this point who are doing safety and security review, that is correct. In terms of the people setting the policies, I think it is valuable to have people with a diversity of viewpoints involved.
ثانيين أطباء إذا على كذا كان الأرض الحين مسطحة.
Represented in the policy development process.
والله ما
And we also
يعني
consult with a number of outside groups whenever we develop new policies to make sure that we're taking into account.
وهو صدق في أشياء يعني عقليا خلاص الحين يعني إحنا وصلنا زمن المفروض في أشياء خلاص تشيلها، بس في ناس لا زال عندهم أشياء ومعلومات مغلوطة وتفكير قديم ما يبون يتطوروا.
Can you just think of one? I mean, you said you reach out to outside groups. Can you think of
ليش
one
ما ترجع
conservative
شخصية
outside
هيمان؟
group that you reach
خلاص
out to
هيمان كان
and
بسناب،
use
خلاص
as a
سناب ما قلت
content
استخدمه.
moderator?
كلام ان المعلومات الطبية ما فيها مجال للمناظرة. لا بالعكس اخوي لازم يكون فيها مجال مناظرة.
stakeholders and groups that
بس
are
انه يكون بين ناس
inputs to our
متخصصين
policy development process.
هني النقطة.
And I'm not involved in those conversations directly, so I would have to get back to you with specifics on
كل
that.
مجال في الدنيا
I'm quite confident
ممكن
that
يكون
we,
في مجال مناظرة إذا كان بين
speak
متخصصين.
with people across the ideological spectrum when we're
لحظة اسكت انت دقيقة. الموضوع لما الكلام اللي تقوله راح يأثر على سلامة المجتمع، موضوع يكون منطقة رمادية وصعب القرار، بس أنا شخصيا أشوف لازم يكون فيه تنقيح المعلومات. كلام صحيح، كلامك صحيح أخوي. تخيل اكو ناس يطلعون يقولون يسوون لقاح ويسيطرون على البشريه ويضيعون شرائح فينا، خليهم يشيلونها. شوف هذا النقطه انه يعني هني كلام صح وهني كلام صح. انت تتفق مع منو؟ هذه ترجع لك انت. انا عن نفسي بالنقطه هذه صراحه انا اتفق مع جوجل ومع الشركات هذه اللي هم قاعدين يسوونه. بس من ناحيه ثانيه اذا بتكون انت محايد بهالنقطه ولا بتشوف حتى كلام صح، خلني اقول رايي وانت رد علي، بس لا تسكتني. الفكره ان انت قاعد تحجر على الكلام اللي انا اقوله انه كانه مو موجود.
And the goal of the program is to limit the distribution
هذه النقطة بس.
of viral hoaxes, so things that are clearly false, from getting a lot of distribution, but we don't ourselves want to be in the business of
كل قام يفتي ويسوي روحه دكتور. صحيح يا اخوي، مو على كذي كل شيء الناس قامت تفتي وتتكلم بزبة موقع هذا. والله موقع هو وجوجل، موقع هالاثنين هم سبب هذا اللي قاعد يصير. لا انا اقول ثانيين اطباء مختصين بعد، ولا لو نسمع جهه واحده كان ضحي مسطع صح. اول مره احضر بث، حياك الله اخوي، حضرت بث غلط لان هذا مو بث يعني في شيء وكذي، بس انه بطلع اسولف نقرا الكومنتات نشوف نتكلم عن الاخوان هذول اللي قاعدين يتملطشون قاعد يتملطشون
for 5 minutes and then we're going to take a short break of the committee. Mr. Johnson
زين يلا 5 دقائق بعدين بريك.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bezos, Amazon has a significant problem with counterfeit products being sold on its platform. Counterfeit products not only rip off the owners of legitimate businesses, they
يقول له في عندك بضاعة مقلدة تنباع في أمازون، تقليد.
Baby food, automobile tires, and other products can kill. Amazon has said it's fixing its counterfeit problem, but counterfeiting seems to be getting worse, not better. Amazon is a $1 trillion company, but Amazon customers are not guaranteed that the products purchased on your platform are authentic. Amazon acts like it's not responsible for counterfeits being sold by third-party sellers on its platform. And we've heard that Amazon puts the burden and cost on brand owners to police Amazon's site, even though Amazon makes money when a counterfeit good is sold on its site. More than half of Amazon's sales come from third-party seller accounts. Why isn't Amazon more aggressive in ensuring that counterfeit goods are not sold on its platform? And why isn't Amazon responsible for keeping all counterfeit products off of its platform?
This is an incredibly important issue and one that we work very hard on. Counterfeits are a scourge. They are a problem that is not, it does not help us earn trust with customers. It's bad for customers. It's bad for honest third-party sellers. We do a lot to prevent counterfeiting. We have a team of more than 1,000 people that does this. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars in systems that do this. We have something called Project Zero, which helps individual products, which really helps with counterfeiting. We have
I'm glad that
other
you
programs
have those
as well.
I'm glad that you have those features in place, but why isn't Amazon responsible for keeping all counterfeit products off of its platform?
خوي
ما
يصير.
امازون
والله مو بقالة بقطعة 8 الله يهداك. امازون بكوكب الارض كله شلون
We've heard from numerous third-party sellers and brand owners that Amazon has used knockoffs as leverage to pressure sellers to do what Amazon wants. For example, the founder of Pop Sockets testified in January that Amazon itself was selling knockoffs of its product. After reporting the problem, it was only after his company committed to spending $2 million on advertisements that Amazon appears to have stopped diverting sales to these knockoffs.
هذه نقطة كبيرة جدا. يقول لك شركة بوب سوكت تعرفونها؟ بوب سوكت مالت المسكات مالت التليفون. اشتكى ان امازون قاعدين يحاولون لما تسوي سيرش على المسكات حق التليفون يحاولون حق او ان الريزلتس اللي تطلع النتائج اللي تطلع تكون حق منتجات مشابهة او تقليد من البوب سوكت. وهذا الشيء ما تعدل الا لما دفعوا $2,000,000 علشان الدعاية والاعلان بامازون علشان يتم توجيه الناس اللي تبي تشتري بوب سوكت إلى البوب سوكت فعليا.
What is your explanation for that business practice?
شنو جوابك؟
That's unacceptable. If those are the facts, and that if someone somewhere inside Amazon said, buy X dollars in ads and then we'll help you with your counterfeit problem, that is unacceptable, and I will look into that and we'll get back to your office with that. What I can tell you is that we have a counterfeit crimes unit. We attempt to prosecute counterfeiters. I would encourage this body to pass stricter penalties for counterfeiters and to increase law enforcement resources to go after counterfeiters.
But your company does make money off of counterfeit goods being sold on your platform, isn't that correct?
If it does, in my view, sir, it would only be in the short term. We don't make. I would much rather lose a sale than lose a customer.
All right,
we make money because customers come back.
Fair enough, sir. Making companies pay extra to avoid having their products disappear in rankings seems to be so unfair, especially to small businesses. The American dream is threatened.
جيف بيزوس صالح مو مسوي نفسه مسكين. جيف بيزوس مسوي نفسه انه هو ما يدري اصلا الله وين قاطه. هو شكله يا قاعد دشي. السلام عليكم شباب، شو الوضع؟ ها؟ اسئله يعني يسالون واجاوب انا. اي اوكي ماشي. يا وين السؤال؟ اي تفضل اخوي اسال. شنو هو وضع كذي قاعد يصير معاهم؟ هذا اللي قاعد اشوفه اللي قاعد يسويه معاهم كله ما ادري. لا ما ارضى انا. شفت لما تدش على مسؤول اخوي والله موظف عندكم، لا اخوي لا ما يجوز، الموظف هذا ما يصير يسوي كذي، انا راح حاسبه، هذا الامر ما يصير. بس تطلع يا معوج فيك انت فشلتنا. هو كذي الوضع اللي قاعد يسوي.
Where a company that is selling on your platform but is not paying anything extra gets buried in the rankings, and but companies that pay extra
توقع نواف ان اللي صاير ان الحكومه الامريكيه تبي تطلع مليارات من عندهم. لا قاعد تطلع مليارات، قاعد تطلع فلوس منهم، بس انه الفكره هذه كلها الحين اللي قاعد يسوونها ترى كلها الانتخابات الجايه.
An advertising service basically for third-party sellers to drive it.
يعني هم اللي شايفينه الحين ان هذين الاربع شركات قاعدين يحطون نفوذهم وقوتهم انه ما يخلون ترامب ينجح مرة ثانية. فالوضع ان الحين هم يبون يورونهم ان شوفوا هذين الشركات مو زينة وما ادري شنو قاعد تكذب عليكم علشان يبون يقوون ناحية ترامب. بس إن لأول مرة بحياتي من كل الهيرينجز وهذا اللي سمعتهم مع الكونغرس والشركات أول مرة أكون مايل صوب الشركات أكثر من الكونغرس، لأن وايد شيء مسخرة اللي قاعد يسوونه. صح في وايد أغلاط أشياء قاعد تسويها الشركات بس كمان يعني.
With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlemen, yields back. The committee will stand in a brief recess.
والله شيء ما طبعا لاحظتوا انت ماكو ولا سؤال حق تيم كوك. احنا ايش كثر صار الحين 40 دقيقة ولا فتح حلقة تيم كوك بالموضوع. ليش جايبينه؟ يكمل كمالة عدد، يكمل القعدة بس عشان يدخلونهم. استراحة راحة استراحة راحة. والله الوضع أكثر واحد أقنعني والله ولا واحد فيهم يقنع، ما يعرفون يسولفون، بس أكثر واحد كسر خاطري مال جوجل صراحة. والله عرفت عرفت كبش الفدا اللي تحطه سي او شيء تعال امسك شيل الليلة. فهو المسكين الهندي قاعد مستر تشيرمان ومستر تشيرمان. والله العظيم انا اعطوني، انا مالي شغل بهذا. وده يقول كذي بس ما يقدر ما يقدر يقول لهم والله انا مالي شغل، هم سووا كل شيء ودبسوني، بس ما يقدر يقولها. فهو صراحة اكثر واحد كسر خاطري. فيسبوك حقير والله، يعني يبين من وجهه ان يبيهم. فأول مرة نصف معاهم والله، أول مرة تي أصف. مشكل تيم كوك ما سمعت له شيء اللي يقول والله حكروا، ما تحكى الرجال، ما فتح الجه. جيف بيزوس مثل ما قلنا اللي نفس ثامر، توي دخلت وش صار معاهم. هذا جيف بيزوس دش، ها شباب وش صار؟ أسئلة يلا أوكي. شنو والله ما أدري. أنت منو أخوي؟ والله أنا ما أدري. أنا قالوا لي قاعد على الكرسي وطالع بالكاميرا هو كذي ما يدري السالفة. مارك زوكربيرج وايد قاعد يلف ويدور ويكذب. جوجل نفس الشيء، مسكين ما كبش الفدا. مارك صار خبرة معاهم. لا يا عمي خلي يولي زين صدق صار خبرة، لا يحق يعطشون فيه. لا هم يعني أكثر اثنين. شنو؟ كنت أظن راح يدعون صاحب تويتر. لا مال تويتر ضامن عمره، هو على سناب شات على هذيل لاعبين صغيرين هذيل ما يطقونها مع هذا، يعني ما يطقونها مع هذيل كلش أبدا. يعني اللي قاعدين يسوونه صدق يعني خلينا نقول مثلا الأربع شركات جوجل فيسبوك أمازون وأبل، لا مستحيل والله يا جماعة. خاصة بسالفة هذه الأكوزيشنز إنه يشترون الشركات الصغيرة. يعني لو بتطالع الحين أشيل أبل من الموضوع، شيلها شوي وما ليش جايبينها. خلينا نشيل الأب ستور اللي هو السبب إن جايبين أبل موجودة هنا. شيل الأب ستور والمبيعات مالتهم والضرائب هذه طلعها من الموضوع. جوجل فيسبوك أمازون، كمية شركات اللي شروها أو قلدوها سووا نفس خدماتهم علشان يحكرون السوق وما يطلع لهم منافس، شيء خيالي. يعني أنت الحين حاول تفكر. توم ساعة واحدة ما أدري واحد من الكونغرس سأل فيسبوك إن واحد سأله قال له أنت قبل 9 سنين 10 سنين 2009 2008 كم منافس، أو 2007 تقريبا كم منافس كان موجود حق فيسبوك، وعدد لأكثر من واحدة. قال له هذول كلهم كانوا منافسين، فريندستار وما أدري منو على شيء ما حتى نسيتهم والله. فقال له سنة 2012 كل هذول المنافسين بح ما في منافسين. شلون يعني؟ ايش رد عليه مارك زوكربيرج؟ لا احنا في عندنا منافسين، طلعوا لنا منافسين باماكن ثانيه. يعني احنا قبل كان عندنا هذول اللي يبون يسوون نفس النتورك، وبعدين طلع لنا سناب شات، واتساب، انستغرام، هذول المنافسين حقنا. كان يعطيه وانشريتهم كلهم، صح؟ كلهم صاروا تحتك يعني. هني عرفت اوبا صح، شراهم كلهم. ماكو منافس. شرى واتساب، شرى انستغرام، عنده فيسبوك، وشرى فيس.com. خلاص بس طشر كل شيء. اقوى 3-4 نتوركات موجوده في العالم: فيسبوك، انستغرام، واتساب، يملكهم فيسبوك. صحيح باليوتيوب اللي ينتقد الشواذ والمثليين يحذفون فيديوه، ان شاء الله يكون سألوهم عن هالشيء من باب وين حرية الرأي. لا اخوي ما يسألونه. هذا عندنا احنا بس نسأل، ما يسألون الأسئلة، ما عندهم هالشيء، لازم يوقفون مع حريتهم. بس بالنسبة شوفوا بالنسبة حق الأخت اللي لابسة جاكيت أبيض، هذا برمادي اللي ورا، اختي ما يقعدون كذي بالكونغرس، مو ناطرة الكنافة يجيبوا لك اياها بالديوانية ونازلة 6 على الباون ما ادري ايش القعدة. بس بالنسبة حق الكرسي، بالنسبة حق هذا، انا هذا شوفوا هذا الكرسي شنو جو كرسي صباغ هذا اللي حاطينه هني ما ادري. والزولية عمرها 300 سنة. اشياء غريبة تشوف عندهم بالمجلس هذا مالهم. مساء واحد قاعد يشرب ماونتن ديو، والحين حاط لي هذا هني ما شنو، هذا كرسي هني. ناطرة وراك. طيب وين المشكلة؟ شاريهم بفلوسه. هي مو مشكلة اخوي انه هو شاريهم بفلوسه، أنا معاك حق، هو شاري كل شيء بفلوسه. بس هي الفكرة ان انت لما تشتري هذه النتوركس وتحتكرها حق نفسك تصير حقك، فما يكون في منافسين. فهمت قصدي؟ يعني الحين لما كان مثلا انستغرام موجود، كان ممكن يكون نتورك منافس حق الفيسبوك، انه يسحب المستخدمين منه. نفس الشيء سناب شات يسحب مستخدمين منه. ولكن لما فيسبوك شرى انستغرام، صار تخيل انستغرام وفيسبوك ضد سناب شات، فراح يصيرون طبقة أقوى ويقطون على بعض، هذا هني على هني، لأن نتورك واحدة. فهي فكرة ان انت تشتري وتستحوذ، نفس لعبة المونوبولي. لما تلعب مونوبولي وتشتري البيوت والعمارات والأماكن، فأنت قاعد تحكر اللاعبين الثانيين إنهم يدفعون لك فلوس لما تخسرهم، وتشتري أراضيهم، تشتري محلاتهم، وتطلعهم برا السوق. هذه فكرة اللعبة. فأنت تبي تطلعهم عشان تبقى أنت الوحيد. فهي مو فكرة إنه والله يبي يشتري وإنه شرب فلوسه ولا مو بفلوسه وبايق، لا، هي الفكرة إن أنت قاعد تحكر السوق حقك. فلو نلاحظ الحين راح نشوف، خلينا نقول من 10 سنين هم هذه ال4 شركات، ما شفنا شركات ثانية. قيسوها خلينا نقول من 2016 2015 لين الحين. في نتورك جديد سمعتوا فيه طلع وانشهر وهذا غير تيك توك، غير القدم اللي نعرفهم؟ فيسبوك، اوكي، فيسبوك، تويتر، انستغرام، سناب شات، عدل، وواتساب. هذه الخمسة تقريبا كلها نعرفهم. من 2015 لين الحين ما في نتورك جديد طلع قاعد ينافس هذيل الخمسة. صار له يمكن سنة ولا سنة ونص قاعد نسمع عن تيك توك، ومو جونا كلنا يعني، حق الصغار بالعمر. بس هاي النتوركس اللي موجودة ما في شيء جديد قاعد يطلع. فهذا الاحتكار هو قاعد يسبب هذا الشيء. خلصت الاستراحة؟ شلون البث عندي متأخر؟ صدق؟ اي والله ردوا بكاه. صح كان عندي انا كنت اوقف وهذا الظاهر وقف عندي. شوف ردينا على وي الحبيب بنوكيو. احلى شيء باتشاي وزوكربيرج اندعس. والله مساء كتبتها بتويتر انه يا جماعه يعني شو احنا الحين قاعد نضحك عليهم زين يسوون فيهم ايه يلا ما ردنا راح نستخدم النتوركس مالتهم. يعني شوف احنا الحين قاعد نتحلطم بيوتيوب مال جوجل وفي ناس الحين موجوده بانستغرام تحلطم على انستغرام ومال فيسبوك. نحن جميعنا منافقون.
own goals some of the time and it's our job in running the company to make sure that we minimize errors and
أنا والله يا جماعة مو يعني لما طالع وجهه قاعد أفكر شيء واحد بس وين حواجبه؟
Do you think that impacts the culture and perhaps empowers some of the content moderators to also treat people?
لأنه ما شاء الله عيونه وايد خضر ما أدري زرق فشي وأبيض وايد وجهه شيبه بس ماكو حواجب. شوف جيف بيزوس شلون قاعد ما يدري شو هو قاعد كان شباب نسولف شنو ما يدري يسأل.
Congressman, I'm not sure it's appropriate to get into a specific personnel issue publicly.
I mean, I could just tell you that Palmer Luckey's NDA with you. Seconds, but Palmer Luckey's NDA with you doesn't allow him to talk to anyone except government officials. I'm a government official. I've seen the messages where you have specifically directed Mr. Luckey to make statements regarding his politics for the benefit of your company. So I think both in the case of these content moderators and in the case of the testimony you just gave regarding Mr. Luckey and firing people over their politics, there is serious question as to whether or not you're giving truthful testimony here or whether it's lying before Congress. I see my time's expired and I'll yield back.
بطشون.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Boucher, I wanted to focus a little bit on Google's acquisition of YouTube and some of the consequences of that move for consumer privacy competition.
Mr. Zuckerberg,
Google
Mr.
purchased
Bachai,
YouTube in 2006
Tim Cook,
after identifying it as a potential rival that could
Tim Cook
eventually draw business
المزهرية
away
اللي
from Google.
موجودة
And it's
فيها.
my understanding Google
تضييع
paid
داتا
1.65
بالستريم بدون ما
for that
ولا شيء
acquisition,
ما له داعي.
nearly 30 times its original
تيم
bid
كوك
of 50
سبب
million.
وجودك اليوم
So could you tell us
والله
why
كمالة
Google
عدد
was
ما
going to
أدري.
pay so much more
شوف
beyond
مسكين
the
قاعد
initial proposed
مؤدب
bid?
ما يسوي.
And was this as a result of any analysis on the harm
سندار
Google would suffer if a
بشاي.
competitor had purchased YouTube?
شوف لما أبلة سماح تزفك قدام الصف هاي شوف تقعد كذي مثله مسكين.
We acquired YouTube in 2006 and this was well before my time there as CEO, and I wasn't directly involved. But what I do recall at the time is that we saw it as a new emerging area, and our mission is to help users with information. We saw an opportunity.
والله ما
only had 67 people.
Okay, was Mr. Page in charge of that decision?
Congressman, I wasn't directly involved, but I'm pretty sure our senior leadership team at that time definitely looked into it.
Okay, I would encourage the subcommittee to take the steps necessary to have us hear from whoever was in charge of that. Moving on, Google is now by far the top online site where Americans watch videos, including children's videos. And as I'm sure you're aware, federal law prevents companies from collecting data on children under 13. However, just last year, the Federal Trade Commission found that Google had spent years knowingly collecting data on children under 13 on YouTube and offering advertisers the ability to target those children directly. Mr. Boucher, did YouTube use the data it illegally acquired to improve its ability to target ads to children?
طحس.
We are, this is an area, I take it very seriously. I'm a parent too. We are committed, we have invested tremendously. We have a dedicated product for kids in YouTube Kids. On the main YouTube platform, we make sure we have clear policies, we enforce them rigorously. Just in Q4 of 2019, we flagged and removed almost close to 1 million videos, potentially for concerns around child safety. So it's an area we are investing rigorously and will continue to do so.
Well, I'm more concerned about the fact that you're investing rigorously in luring in advertisers like toy makers, Mattel, and Hasbro by telling them that YouTube is the #1 website regularly visited by kids. So that sounds like you're targeting the kids and then targeting advertisers to bring them on board. Is that correct?
Today, in the main side of YouTube, we don't allow anyone under 13 to create accounts. There are scenarios in which there could be family viewing, and today there are creators who create content oriented towards families, and as part of that, there are advertisers which are interested in connecting with those users. But everything we do here, we obviously comply with all the applicable regulations. And,
okay. Well,
هو في من كلامه صح، بس انه عرفت لما طارق العلي بمسرحية سيف العرب يقول والله ودي اصدقك بس قوية لا اسف سعد الفري حامد ديار، ودي اصدقك بس قوية، يعني هي قاعد تقول لك ان انت قاعد تجمعون بيانات، تدرون ان في يهال تحت 13 سنة يستخدمون يوتيوب وقاعدين يتجمعون بياناتهم بشكل غير قانوني وقاعدين تستغلونها، تعطونها حق المعلنين، تقولون لهم احنا اكبر منصة اللي هي عن اليوتيوب الاطفال يدشونها، فتقدرون تحطون اعلانات عن هذا الشيء. الاخ يرد ان انا عندي عيال ونهتم حق هذا الشيء، واحنا لا ما نهتم. اوكي ممكن نصدق، بس كلنا نستخدم يوتيوب، كلنا ندري ان 3/4 اللي يدشون والمحتوى اللي مشهور وهذا مال يهال. زي شلون يطلع حق اليهال، او ان شلون اليهال يكتشفون هذه الاشياء من شنو؟
Let's look at some of the content that is specifically for children. COPPA
YouTube Kids
makes it illegal to target those kids, but we've got an issue where content creators are in a very difficult position now. So if a show like Sesame Street doesn't want to show ads for junk food on YouTube, does YouTube allow it to make that choice?
Today we do, we have choices both for creators in terms of tools and preferences, and we have extensive tools for advertisers, and above all for users we give a choice. They can either use YouTube as a subscription service without seeing those types of ads, or they can use it for free with ads. So we give choice, and for us it is of utmost importance that YouTube is a place where people come to learn, and we find increasingly small and medium businesses use YouTube to thrive, especially even during COVID. Particularly
let's go back to content that's designed for children. So, if there's an organization like Sesame Street that wants to provide child-centered content, but they don't want that content to be sullied, shall we say, with junk food ads or something, my understanding is that you say that content creators can do that, but we've got a recent report from the Wall Street Journal that says YouTube hasn't been honoring those requests. And it's been making it difficult for independent auditing companies like OpenSlate to independently audit that and then report back to those content creators about whether or not YouTube is honoring those. Is that correct?
أبي أعرف أنا فيصل صديقي.
But I'm happy to understand it better and have my office follow up with your staff, Congressman.
I would appreciate that. My time has expired. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair, I recognize himself for 5 minutes.
مسكين بتشاي.
Mr. Bezos, thank you for being here today. In your opening statement, you
تروح ترد على اليهال.
You indicated in on this quote that Amazon accounts for less than 1% of the $25 trillion global retail market.
خاطري مرة واحدة يردون على السؤال بإجابة مباشرة. ما يقدر أخوي، ما يقدر. إجابة مباشرة راح تنمسك عليه.
Based on the empirical studies I reviewed, you're referring to a broad definition of retail that includes restaurants,
موظفين فيسبوك وجوجل بالشرق الأوسط إذا ما عجبهم الشيء اللي تنشره يشيلون القناة أو حسابك
I
بالفيسبوك.
wonder if you know what percent.
اخوي نوبدي هذا اللي مساع قاعد يقولوا لك اياه ان احنا ما عندنا رقابة يدوية ان احنا نسكر ونحط. كلامك الحين يأكد كلام مال الكونغرس ان في رقابة يدوية، ان والله ما عجبني اشيله. اغلى مزارية في العالم.
The figures I've seen for
حاجة مزهرية لأن ما عندهم أدلة عن انتهاكات في أبل ستور. لا هم سألوه على الأب ستور أول شيء بس خلاص، بس جاوب الرجال وانتهى. بس صراحة ما شفت يعني، فراح أرجع مرة ثانية أشوف اللي قاله يعني. بس اللي قاعد أشوفه أنتم مثل ما أنتم شايفين الحين صار لنا صار لنا ساعة. هم صار لهم 5 ساعات الحين. شفت أتكلم مرة واحدة تيم كوك وهم باطشين زوكربيرغ بيزوس بتشاي ما بتشاي. زين شباب بدال لا تضيعون وقتنا ووقتكم، واحد منكم يسأل تيم كوك وين از ذا ايفون 12 فكونا خلاص بلا هذا.
With respect to concerns about the way in which Amazon uses confidential information. But we've also heard that not just with respect to the marketplace, but Amazon's cloud computing arm, AWS, the notion that that computing arm essentially identifies startups' best technologies and rolls out replica products and services. So Mr. Bezos, does Amazon use confidential information that companies share via AWS to build competing services?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of. AWS does often, they do keep expanding their services.
ما أدري يعني. Not that I'm aware of.
15 years ago.
أنا ما أدري والله يا جماعة. أنا قالوا لي تعال قاعد هني.
I appreciate that. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. But last week, one of Amazon's former engineers posted online that he and his team, quote, proactively identified growing businesses on AWS, that they built competing products, and that they targeted those products to the businesses' customers. And there's been public reporting on that strategy. So I guess I wonder if you can comment on that. And
AWS هني قاعد يسأل عن خدمات أمازون ويب سيرفيس. الكلاود ما كلاود وكذي.
Some databases of different kinds and so on, where we see that it's an important product for customers, and we make our own product offering in that arena. But it doesn't mean we stop servicing the other companies that are also making those products. We have competitors using AWS, and we work very hard to make them successful. Netflix is one example, Hulu is another, and so on.
I think the concern, Mr. Bezos, with respect, is that the pattern emerges across the different components in Amazon, whether it's the marketplace or whether it's the cloud service, as I mentioned. In addition, there was an article, I'm sure you're aware, in the Wall Street Journal regarding the Alexa Fund, that according to news reports, Amazon's venture capital fund, the Alexa Fund, had invested in a number of different companies. I believe you're familiar with
Alexa Fund, for example, in
Crowd Corp.
جاب الدرس.
No, sir, I'm afraid it doesn't.
Okay, well, I'll represent to you, according to the Wall Street Journal, and I'll just quote from them, when Amazon incorporated its venture capital fund invested in Defined Crowd Corp, it gained access to the technology startup's finances and other confidential information. Nearly 4 years later, in April, Amazon's cloud computing unit launched an artificial intelligence product that does almost exactly what Defined Crowd does, said Defined Crowd founder and chief executive Daniel Braja. Is that refresh your recollection? Are you aware of those allegations?
أكيد لا.
I read that article, but I didn't remember that piece of it. I apologize for that. I don't know the specifics of that situation, and I would be happy to get back to your office with more information about that.
بس أنا راح أرجع لك مرة ثانية.
I certainly would welcome that, and to the extent that you all can follow up with the subcommittee with respect to this particular article and the different episodes that are referenced, both in terms of Defined Crowd Corp. There's also another company called
شركة متهمة أمازون إنهم مقلدين ماخذين شغلهم وكذي.
We are very concerned about this innovation kill zone that seems to be emerging. I represent Boulder and Fort Collins, two of the fastest growing and most innovative tech hubs in the country, and entrepreneurs and founders shared their stories with this committee during one of our field hearings, actually a field hearing that we held at the University of Colorado Law School just earlier this year. And they are extremely dependent on big technology firms, including in terms of investment and capital, yet they live in constant fear that the platforms could steal their core technologies or ideas, making it impossible to compete because of those existing advantages. So I see my time has expired, but we will certainly be following up with respect to the
follow-up.
That I referenced. With that, I would yield
Follow-up.
back. The gentleman's time has expired. And the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Macbeth, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Cook, Facebook
تيم كوك يا
acquired
جماعة
WhatsApp
تيم
in
كوك راح
2015,
يتحجى.
And at that time, Sheryl Sandberg told the board that the deal was critical for countering the App Store power of Apple and Google, who choke off Facebook's access to mobile devices. Was Sheryl Sandberg correct? Does Apple have the power to exclude apps from the App Store?
If you look at the history of this Congresswoman, we've increased the number of apps from 500 to 1.7 million. So there's a very wide gate for the App Store. And there's fierce competition for developers, and we want every app we can on the platform.
Okay, so, but Mr. Cook, then what you're saying is that Apple can exclude apps from the App Store. In fact, it has. In 2018, Apple introduced an
قاعد تسأل هل أبل تقدر إن هي تستثني أو تطلع برامج من الأب ستور ولا لا؟ جاوب.
app called Screen Time, which helps people limit the amount of time they or their kids spend on their iPhones. Is that correct?
It sounds right.
Okay, but before Screen
الوحيد اللي جاوب دايركت الوحيد.
Time existed, there were other apps in the App Store that gave parents control over their kids' phone usage, apps like Our Pact and Kids Locks, and parents depended on them. Soon after you introduced Screen Time, however, you removed these competing apps from the App Store. One mother wrote to Apple saying, and I quote her, "I am deeply disappointed that you have decided to remove this app and others like it, thereby reducing consumer access to much-needed services to keep children safe and protect their mental health and well-being." Mr. Cook, why did Apple remove competing apps right after you released Screen Time?
We were concerned, Congresswoman, about the privacy and security of kids. The technology that was being used at that time was called MDM, and it had the ability to sort of take over the kids' screen, and a third party could see it, and so we were worried about their safety.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Today we have.
I appreciate that, but the timing of the removal seems very coincidental. If Apple wasn't attempting to harm competitors in order to help its own app, why did Phil Schiller, who runs the App Store, promote the Screen Time app to customers who complained about the removal of rival parental control apps?
Congresswoman, I can't see this email. I'm sorry, my eyes are not good enough to read it. But I see Screen Time as just an alternative, but there are over 30 parental control apps that are in the App Store today. And so there's vibrant competition for
ليش الصورة عندكم قامت تتقطع كذي؟
Mr. Cook, the fact is that Apple sidelined Screen Time's competition by keeping them out of the App Store. And while Apple claims these competitors
شوفوا بشاي الطالب اللي زفته أبلة سماح قبل شوي الحين وهو في مرحلة هذه الشموخ إنه قاعد يشوف طالب ثاني قاعد ينزف يمه قاعد يشوف تيم كوك ينزف وهو قاعد ولا نزفيت أنا قبل شوي لا كأنه
weren't meeting Apple's privacy standards. These apps creators say that you admitted them back in 6 months later without requiring significant privacy changes. And of course, 6 months is truly an eternity for small businesses to be shut down. Even worse, if all the while a larger competitor is actually taking away customers. And you know, this is not the first time something like this seems to have happened, Mr. Cook. Let me give you another example, you know, of the harm that's been caused to your competitors. In 2010, Apple introduced an online bookstore called the iBookstore, where it offered ebooks. And the only major publisher that didn't agree to join iBookstore was Random House. Random House wanted to offer its own ebooks through its own apps and submitted their apps to be added to the App Store.
اختي خليه يجاوب خلينا نعرف انت سألتك الحين 6 دقائق.
Apple and Random House. Senior VP Eddie Q said, and I'm quoting him, I'm quoting him when he said it prevented an app from Random House from going live in the App Store. Q himself cited this app rejection as a factor in finally getting Random House to give in and join iBookstore. Mr. Cook, is it fair for Apple to use its power over the App Store to pressure a business to join Apple's own app?
I can't see the email, and so I don't know the context of it, but there are many reasons why an app might not initially go through the App Store gate, because it may not work properly. There may be other issues with it, so it's very difficult to see. What I would say though, on a macro basis, the gate to the App Store is very wide. We have 1.7 million apps in it. It's become an economic miracle with over $138 billion of commerce just in the United States.
Mr. Cook, I really, really appreciate that sentiment. But, you know, I want to say to you that Apple enjoys enormous power to control which apps can reach consumers. Even some of the largest companies in the country fear your power. Our evidence suggests that your company has used its power to harm your rivals and boost your own business. This is fundamentally unfair. It harms small businesses that rely on you to reach customers. It stifles the innovation that is the lifeblood of our economy. Ultimately, it reduces the competition and choices that are made available to consumers, and that is a great concern to all of us. And I yield back.
باختصار يا جماعة، كل هذا سؤال هي ما قاعد تسأل، هي قاعد تبطش بتيم كوك. فباختصار كل اللي قالته ان ابل، ان انتم قاعد تستغلون قوتكم، ان انتم ابل ان توخرون منافسينكم وتقدمون بعض الخدمات اللي انتم تشوفونها واللي انتم تبونها بس بالنسبة حق الاب ستور. في بزنسز وايد، السمول بزنس، المشاريع الصغيرة والمتوسطة وهذيل واللي توهم قاعد يطلعون، والديفلوبرز الصغار ما قاعد ياخذون حقوقهم بسبب سيطرتكم على هذا المكان، على الاب ستور واللي انتم قاعدين تسوونه. بغض النظر حبنا حق ابل ولا كرهنا لها، انا اشوف كلامها صحيح من وجهة نظر. اذا بتفكر فيها والله الامان في يعني المكان هذا قاعد يحافظ ويسوي وهالسوالف هذه حقي انا كمستخدم، ممتاز، انا مستانس صراحة. بس من وجهة نظر والله اذا انا بصير ديفلوبر وانزل برامج وابيع، وايد المنافسة يعني غصبا عليك لازم تسوي المستحيل عشان طبعا غير المستحيل اذا ربك ما يبي يوفقك وانسى الموضوع من كثرة الناس اللي قاعد تصير. يعني وين بيطلع برنامجك بهالاب ستور زائد من غيروا طريقة عرض الاب ستور. انا كنت وايد استمتع فيه قبل، انه كان في سكشن موجود شو اول، انه تدش تشوف كل البرامج الجديدة اللي توها نازلة، اللي توها معطينها ابروف، تدش تشوفهم. من تقريبا 4 سنين او 3 سنين من مسك فيل شيلر، تقريبا خلينا نقول 5 سنين، وغيروا الاب ستور من iOS 8 يمكن او 7، هذا السكشن اختفى. ما تشوف كل البرامج، تشوف التوب مالوت البيد والفري، وبعض اللي موجود بالكاتيجوري اول 500 600، وبعدين ما تشوف الباقي. فصح كلامها صح، انا ايد صراحة كلامها. بالمقابل تيم كوك قاعد يعطيها، احنا ما عندنا الكلام، احنا بلشنا من 500 او ما ادري كم اب ستور 50,000، الحين وصلنا 1,000,000 وما ادري 700,000، فاحنا قاعد نزيد ما قاعد نقل. اوكي 1,700,000 تطبيق تليفوناتنا كلها يمكن فيها 100 كلنا نستخدم نفس البرامج. هم الشركات الكبار بس اللي ماسكين. فالمساكين هذول الصغار.
That concludes that round. In light of the request of Mr. Gates for a third round, and because many of my colleagues would like to get more fulsome answers on a number of issues, we'll proceed to a final round, and my expectation is we will conclude within the hour. And I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes.
بعد باقي ساعة وآخر ساعة. صار لكم 6 ساعات شباب خلاص يعني. أنا زهقت. أنا صار فيني ننام.
Facebook and Google are designed to keep users on their platforms whatever the cost. Because disinformation, propaganda, and hateful speech are good for engagement. They're good for business. But over 100 years ago, the Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. wrote, the most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing panic. My first question is, Mr. Zuckerberg, do you agree with that principle, that there are limits to harmful and false speech, and that are particularly important when it comes to the health and safety of the public?
Congressman, I certainly do, and I actually think
جلسة الحشرة المفروض يسمونه. هو ترى كل الهيرنجز ويمكن يا جماعة أنتم ما تتابعونهم وايد هذه الهيرنجز وكذي هي بس تصير شيء أجيبك أحشرك وألعن خيرك وأحطك بالزاوية وأحكرك وأطشرك بس هو كذي.
Congressman, I think we have a responsibility to limit the spread of content that's going to be.
المرة الوحيدة اللي شفت فيها هيرنج وكان أغلب الهيرنج واللي قاعدين يسألونه كان فيه هيبة حقه وخايفين منه ومو قادرين يسكتونه ستيف جوبز. العموم قاعد أنا مستر ستيف احنا ندري احنا سامحنا احنا جايبينك يعني ارجوك بس لو تكرمت تجاوبنا على. هو الوحيد اللي كنت اشوفه صراحة اللي يبطش فيهم. دشوا إذا تبون والله دشوا كتبوا ستيف جوبز هيرنج نشوف استمتع.
With all due respect, except that it is often the most engaging. It's the most. It brings the most likes.
لا أخوي خالد هذه جلسة استماع ما فيها أحكام. يعني هي جلسة مجلس مثل مجلس الشعب. يعني مو محاكمة. بس الكلام محسوب عليهم لأن يعني ناس كبار إذا قط كلمة يمين ولا يسار الأسهم تصير بالأرض الماء كذي يعني. إيه على طاري الأسهم خلينا نشوف الحين شنو الوضع.
Coronavirus hype biggest political hoax in history. U.S. hospitals getting paid more to label cause of death as coronavirus. During the greatest public health crisis of our lifetime, don't you agree that these articles
شنو الوضع الحين قاعد يصير؟
will cost lives?
Congressman, with respect, we certainly have policies that prohibit false information about COVID that would lead to imminent harm. And we've been quite aggressive about taking that down, as some of the questioning from the other side of the aisle has shown so far.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg,
I'm quite proud of our efforts here.
Well, with all due respect, the problem is Facebook is profiting off and amplifying disinformation that harms others because it's profitable. This isn't a speech issue. It's about Facebook's business model that prioritizes engagement in order to keep people on Facebook's platform to serve up more advertisements. So I'll ask you very specifically, what are you doing right now to protect people from demonstrably false claims related to this deadly pandemic?
شنو قاعد تسوون؟
Congressman, I'll certainly answer that, but I have to disagree with the assertion that you're making that this content is somehow helpful for our business. It is not what people want to see, and we rank our what we show in feed based on what is going to be the most meaningful to people and is going to create long-term satisfaction, not what's just going to get engagement or clicks today. That's a common misperception about the company.
If that's true, Mr. Zuckerberg, how do you explain that on Monday, the second most popular post on Facebook was a Breitbart video claiming that you don't need a mask and hydroxychloroquine is a cure for COVID. And in the first 5 hours after being posted on Facebook, it racked up 20 million views and over 100,000 comments before Facebook acted to remove it.
Well, Congressman, a lot of people shared that, and we did take it down because it violates our policies. We work with the
After
CDC
20 million people saw it over the period of 5 hours. I mean, doesn't that suggest, Mr. Zuckerberg, that your platform is so big that even with the right policies in place, you can't contain deadly content?
Congressman, I don't think so. I think we have, on COVID misinformation in particular, a relatively good track record of fighting and taking down lots of false content, as well as putting up authoritative information. We have built a COVID information center with authoritative information from health officials.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. I just have one more question for you.
2 billion people.
I appreciate that. Mr. Zuckerberg, if a television station runs a false political advertisement, they're held liable for that. Why should Facebook or any other platform be different? While you may not be a publisher, you're responsible maybe not for the first posting, but you then take that post and you apply a set of algorithms that decide how you will disseminate that, which is a business decision, not a First Amendment decision. And it's hard to understand why Facebook shouldn't be responsible for those business decisions.
Congressman, in terms of political ads, we've modeled a lot of our policies off of the FCC guidelines on broadcasters and their requirements to run political ads equally from all different sides.
Well, I think this,
of course, have more.
Yeah, I think these examples, unfortunately, Mr. Zuckerberg, are just the tip of the iceberg. It's not just about COVID. Facebook hosts or enables countless pages and ads that are dedicated to conspiracy theories and calls to violence, including content that led to the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville in 2017. And Facebook gets away with it because you're the only game in town. There's no competition forcing you to police your own platform. Allowing this misinformation to spread can lead to violence. And frankly, I believe it strikes at the
الياهل اللي امه قاعد تزفه ليش كلت اكل اختك ليش اكلت اكل اختك
Mr. Gates for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bachai, in 2016,
مستر باتشاي بس خليني اوريكم شوفوا الستوكس تكفون شوفوا الستوك شوف ابل وجوجل في العلالي مايكروسوفت تعال مايكروسوفت وينها ليش مو جايبين مايكروسوفت داو جونز لحظة خلنا شوف كله فوق سيرش فيسبوك فوق امازون فوق عبالكم يطيحون تكفى شوفوا شو كل اللي قاعد نقوله الحين الطق والمسخرة اللي قاعد تصير فيهم ولا يهمك عمي ولا يهمك انت الربحان.
We respect the democratic process. We are deeply committed to it. As a company, we take pride in the information we provide.
بشكل عام العراب اهلا وسهلا. بشكل عام سهم من 6 أشهر في ازدياد هذا صحيح لأن الشركات تقنية بس الوضع انه بشوف الوضع الحين هذا الوضع اللي قاعد يصير انه بالهيرنج اللي قاعد يسوونه.
Through the election across both sides there was a lot of opinions and as you know elections are kind of a polarizing moment.
Microsoft عندهم في المحتوى.
There was a lot of rhetoric about certain issues which were.
I understand rhetoric. I guess the question
Microsoft
is, when the senior members of your team in your presence said that they did have the intent to change the outcome in a subsequent election. And then
هذا ماسك جوجل من أول ما قاعد هو باطش بجوجل كل شوي مستر بيتشاي مشكلة ربع ترامب والله.
What action did you take as the CEO to protect and preserve the neutrality of your platform?
Congressman, no one had a view on ever interfering with elections or so on. But what I can tell you is we've made it very clear about 2 years ago.
سناب شات طال عمرك ما يطقها مع هذيل. سناب شات يعتبر لعب أطفال بالنسبة حق الأربعة هذيل اللي قاعد جايبينهم اليوم.
None of that should ever. They shouldn't bring that as they work on any of our products. And if we found any evidence that people are using a political agenda to manipulate any of our content platforms, we would take strong enforcement action.
We have sort of a string of events here. We have the 2016 meeting where people demonstrated their intent to make changes to hurt the president. Then we have your testimony today that's a little different than your testimony from December, where you say people can manipulate blacklists, and then you have the outcome where sites like Breitbart and Gateway Pundit and others see that disparate treatment. So it really doesn't take Sherlock Holmes.
لا هي الفكرة ما لها شغل بالسوشيال ميديا، لها علاقة بالاحتكار السوق. يعني أبل ما لها شغل بالسوشيال ميديا، بس لها احتكار، لها شغل بالأب ستور. فهو وأمازون ما لها شغل بالسوشيال ميديا، بس احتكار سوق المبيعات.
And I'm particularly talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which you allow to dictate who can receive donations on your Amazon Smile platform, have said the Catholic Family News, Catholic Family Ministries, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, the American Family Association, the Family Research Council, the Jewish Defense League, and even Dr. Ben Carson are extremists and should be treated differently. Dr. Carson is on the cabinet and is one of the most renowned minds in America. I'm just wondering why you would place your confidence in a group that seems to be so out of step and seems to take mainstream Christian doctrine and label it as hate.
Sir, it's a good question. We have, for those of you who don't know what Amazon Smile is, it's a program that allows customers to designate a certain
حول على business الحين
to go to charity that we then pay for. And they can select from any one of millions of charities. And we use the Southern Poverty Law Center data to say which charities are extremist organizations. We also use the U.S. Foreign Asset Office to do the same thing.
But
those
why?
two together.
Since they're calling the Catholics and these Jewish groups hateful groups, why would you trust them?
Sir, I'm going to acknowledge this is an imperfect system, and
no doubt.
I would love suggestions on better or additional sources.
My suggestion would be a divorce from the SPLC, and I see that I'm out of time, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the chair. Recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Facebook is dominant not just in the social media market, but also in its digital surveillance capabilities. In 2012, Facebook had several tools that allowed it to conduct digital surveillance, including trackers, Facebook's like button, Facebook login, and a series of application programming interfaces or APIs. Mr. Zuckerberg, these tools provide Facebook with insights into its competitors' websites and apps. Isn't that correct? Yes or no?
ليش حاطين business? Mark.
I think broadly the answer to what you're saying is yes. We, like every other company here, do market research to understand what people are finding valuable.
All right. Okay. So you my question. I appreciate that answer, though.
Facebook كله مجلود.
Before Facebook acquired Instagram, a Facebook vice president emailed you suggesting ways to improve Facebook's competitive research, end quote.
مو هو جايبينهم كذي عشان يجلدونهم بس يعني هو زادوا الشيء عليه شوي. عرفت لما تدش ديوانية في عندك واحد هذا اللي 24 ساعة بس ينضغط بس تعال انت شايف طالع كاك اللي بس يضحكون عليه. فهذا يبونه مسكين بس يبطشون فيه.
Mr. Zuckerberg, how does Facebook improve its competitive research to distinguish friends from foe?
Congressman, I'm not sure exactly what he was referring to in that email there, but he is one of the people involved in running our analytics organization, and I think it's natural that he would
والله يبونه حق الانتخابات.
focused on market research and understanding more there.
And certainly, isn't it true that Facebook, after that conversation, purchased the web analytics company Onevo in 2013 to give Facebook more capability to monitor its competitors?
Congressman, I think you have the timing correct. After we purchased Onevo as part of our broader market research capacity.
And that would give you the capability to monitor your competitors, correct?
Congressman, it gave aggregate analytics as to what people were using and what people were finding valuable.
والله العظيم قاعد يكسرون عليه. انت شريت الشركة هذه مالت التحليلات عشان تعرف بيانات الشركات المنافسة حقك بعد جلسة الهيرنج في ذيك السنة 2012 و 2013 شريت شركة. والله الكونغرس احنا ما لا هو كان بالرود ماب، يعني احنا بخطتنا كانت ان احنا نبي نشتري الشركة. تكفى شو الجواب؟ يرحم امك شو الجواب؟ والرجال قاعد يقول لك انت شريت شركة بعد ما قلت الحكي، صح ولا لا؟ اي ولا لا؟ لا والله هو كان بالخطة ان احنا نشتريها. يا سلام.
Valuable. Sort of like the type of product you would get from Nielsen or ComScore or some of these other third-party companies that provide similar data.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, that acquisition gave you non-public real-time data about engagement, usage.
يقول له عزيزي الفاضل مارك زوكربيرغ، هذه الشركة أعطتك بيانات غير معلنة عن
public real-time data about engagement, usage.
عن التفاعل والاستخدام.
And how much time people spend on
كم وقت الناس، كم الوقت اللي الناس تقضيه في البرامج. هذا كل البيانات صارت عندك، معلومات عندك.
And when it became public that Facebook was using Onavo to conduct digital surveillance.
ولما انتشر الخبر ان فيسبوك يستخدمون البيانات هذه.
Apple's App Store. Isn't that true? Surveillance.
ولما شوف لاحظ لما ان طلعت بيانات ان الفيسبوك قاعد تستغل هذه البيانات.
Your company got kicked out of Apple's App Store.
برنامجكم فيسبوك وقفوه من الاب ستور بالايفون.
Isn't that true?
صح ولا لا؟ لا.
Congressman, I'm not sure I'd characterize it in that way. I think this was part of the
Onavo did get kicked out of the App Store. Isn't that true?
Congressman, I believe we took the app out after Apple changed their policies.
And it was because of it was because
يقول لك ابل طردوا برنامجكم. لا ما طرد. اوكي اعيد الصيغه. البرنامج هذا اللي انتم شريتوه الشركه ابل شالت البرنامج من الاب ستور لانه كان يسوي كذي. لا اخوي احنا شلناه. يقول لا احنا شلناه بعد ما ابل غيروا سياستهم.
Congressman, I'm not sure that the policy was worded that way, or that that's exactly the right characterization of it. But
okay, well, let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. After Onavo was booted out of the App Store, you turned to other surveillance tools such as Facebook Research app, correct?
Congressman, in general, yes, we do a variety of multi-research apps.
And also, isn't it true, Mr. Zuckerberg, that Facebook paid teenagers to sell their privacy by installing Facebook Research app?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with that, but I think it's a...
شوف هو بيزوس قاعد يقول يا رب ما يسألني هذا، يا رب ما يسألني، يا رب ما يسألني. شوف هو
general practice to be able to that companies use to have different surveys and
Facebook
understand data from how people are using different products and what their preferences are.
Facebook Research app got thrown out of the App Store too. Isn't that true?
والله العظيم لو انا مع الكونغرس يعني قاعد يقول شيء ارد شيء. تيم كوك is it true you kicked off the app store؟ رد ها يس ولا يس. ها مارك والله سوي فيهم كذي بس.
Congressman, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, well.
بس خلاص أي اسمها. I'm not telling. خلاص. ما أدري. ما خلاص.
a sustained effort to surveil smaller competitors.
فكني خلاص بس.
To benefit Facebook. These were steps taken to.
شوفوا تبون تعرفون الواحد إذا متوهق ومتوتر شوفوا رموشه. ها شوفوا وجهه. شوفوا إيش كثر قاعد يرمش.
Use data to harm competitors
شو
to shield Facebook from competition. You tried one thing and then you got
شوفوا شلون إيش كثر قاعد يرمش.
Apologies, then you did it all over again.
يجمع معلومات
Isn't that true?
زين
Congressman,
صدق
I respectfully disagree with that characterization. I think every company engages in research to understand what their customers are enjoying so that they can learn and make their products better. And that's what we were trying to do. That's what our analytics team was doing. And I think in general that allowed us to make our services better for people to be able to connect in a whole lot of different ways, which is our goal.
Did you use that capability to purchase WhatsApp?
Ooh.
Congressman, it was one of the signals that we had about WhatsApp's trajectory, but we didn't need it. Without that, it was pretty clear that WhatsApp was a great product. I already had a relationship with Jan Koum, the founder.
And it was a competitor.
The gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from...
والله بطش فيه مسكين بطش فيه.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for all four. Yes or no answer. Do you believe that the Chinese government steals technology from U.S. companies? Start with Mr. Cook.
I don't know of specific cases where we have been stolen from by the government.
So you don't believe that the Chinese government's stealing technology from U.S. companies, or you're just saying that not from yours?
I'm saying I know of no case on ours where it occurred, which is I can only speak to firsthand knowledge.
Mr. Pichai, you believe that the Chinese government steals technology from United States companies?
هذا من ربع ترامب. اوكي هو الحين يبي يدخل الشركات الأربعة بالطوفة. هو يبي يدخلهم بالطوفة. ليش؟ لأن الأربعة قاعد يشتغلون مع الصين والبزنس مالهم كله قايم بالصين. فتخيل الحين أبل اللي السوق الأول عندها الحين الصين والمبيعات عالية شيء يقول لك. والأخ قاعد يقول لهم أنتوا تتوقعون الحكومة الصينية والصين قاعد تبوق من الشركات الأمريكية؟ مستر كوك جاوب أخوي أنا شغلي بالصين والله أخوي أنا ما أدري ما شفتهم باقوا منا شيء. يعني أنت تشوف ما يبقون لا اسمعني أنا قاعد أقول لك منا إحنا أبل ما باقوا شيء. راح على الحين جوجل خلينا نشوف بالجوجل شو يقول له.
I have no first-hand knowledge of any.
I have no first-hand knowledge ما أدري.
Mr. Zuckerberg?
Zuckerberg أنت ماكو بالصين بعد.
Congressman, I think it's well documented that the Chinese government steals technology from American companies.
Thank you.
عشان تعرفون منو اللي مع هني ومنو اللي مع هني. فهني الأخ لأنه ما يشتغل بالصين وعندهم هناك ويتشات ما عندهم فيسبوك فمو فارقة معاه يعني. إيه عمي لا يستخدمون انستغرام ولا واتساب ولا فيسبوك ولا اقدر ادش عندهم. اي بوقولنا اي نشوف امازون اللي المنافس ماله علي بابا.
Mr. Bezos?
Bezos.
You're on mute.
Mr. Bezos, I believe you're on mute.
الضيف.
I'm saying I have heard many reports of that, and I haven't seen it personally, but I've heard many reports of it.
So
أنا ما شفتها شخصيا بس سمعت تقارير. يقول له ما أنا سمعت تقارير.
of all the different products that Amazon carries.
فعرفنا الحين إن أبل وجوجل لأنه مع الصين فعطوك بو. أنا ماليش دعوة. أمازون علي بابا فيسبوك ويتشات
You haven't seen that in any of the companies that sell products on Amazon or your company yourself.
بس مارك أول مرة يجاوب 6 ساعات أول جواب يجاوبه مباشرة ويحس بثقة. والله العيد لكم يا تشوفونه. شوفوا
جوجل
شو إيه شوفه.
Mr. Zuckerberg?
Zuckerberg.
Congressman, I think it's well documented that the Chinese government steals technology from American companies.
Well documented. في أدلة دعمغة إن الصين تبوق. شوف ويقولها بابتسامة ضامن الجواب.
Thank you.
والله اللي يشوف وجهه كم ساعة.
Mr. Bezos? And entrepreneurship in pursuit of the American dream. As you all know from direct experience, this is a country where it's possible to start a company from a garage or a dorm room and experience tremendous success. Do you have any recommendations on how Congress can better protect U.S. firms and U.S. companies from aggression and government intervention abroad, not just in Europe, but in China as well? Anybody that would like to chime in, I'll open it up to any of you.
منو يبي يجاوب عن الصين؟ ها شباب.
None of you have any recommendations on how Congress can better protect U.S. companies like yours.
في أحد عنده اقتراح إنه شلون الكونغرس يحمي أمريكا من الشركات الصينية؟ الشباب رافعين الجام.
All right, well, I'll yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Gates.
أخوي ما ناخذ مشاكلكم إحنا.
Mr. Zuckerberg, what is a digital land grab?
إحنا نبيع تليفونات. نبيع تليفونات أخوي لا تدخل.
Congressman, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, in the emails that your company produced
رجع
committee, there's
حبيب.
one from David Weiner in 2014 where he's describing under the mergers and acquisitions advice within the company
مو قادر مو عارف يقعد
that you need to
مسكين.
engage in a land
هو
grab.
في 2-3 من
I hate the
السناتورز
word
كل ما
land
يجون
grab,
يبون
but I think
يسألونه
that's the best convincing argument
شي عرفت اللي
that we
يعطيك
should
هو.
own that. And it goes on to describe a
إيش يبون
strategy where
هذين؟
Facebook would spend
شوف
5
صار
to
جاي
10% of
يقرد.
its market cap each year to shore up its market position. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, Congressman, thanks for the opportunity to address this and frankly to correct the record because I believe that what he was referring to was a question that was incoming from investors about whether we would continue to acquire different companies. I don't think that wasn't referring to an internal strategy. It was referring to an external question that we were facing about how we would.
الليلة برعاية زوكربيرج هو اللي شايل الليلة أصلاً. هو اللي دافع الطاولة. مسكين مسكين.
That were part of this overall broader space and market around human connection and helping people stay connected and share their experiences.
Okay, well, Mr. Zuckerberg, it seems to be both internal and external because then in an email.
والوحيد اللي خلونا يتكلم يعني
ما. In 2012 we see a similar
يتكلم.
You write, we can likely
أنت قاصر عليك
always
تكلم
buy
حبيبي.
any competitive startups. So is your desire to limit competition by purchasing your competitors consistent with the message to your investors that the way you'll run your company is through digital land grabs?
توهق.
Congressman, I'm not sure I agree with the characterization of how we communicated with investors, but
your words, Mr. Zuckerberg.
But I think the broader point is that there were a lot of new ways that people can connect.
يقول أنا ما أتفق معاك على الكلام يقول هذا كلامك أنت اللي
strategy. You went on to say one thing about startups is you can often acquire them. So I mean, I'm not interested in how people connect. I'm interested in how you acquire businesses to limit competition.
Gentleman's time has expired, but the witness may answer the question.
Congressman, in order to serve people better and help people connect in all the ways they would want, we innovated and built a lot of new use cases internally, and we acquired others. And that, I think, has been a very successful strategy at serving people well. And a lot of the companies that we've been able to acquire have gone on to reach and help connect many more people than they would have been able to on their own.
Grabbed a lot of land. I would say I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. I now recognize the chair of the full committee, Mr. Nadler, for 5 minutes.
تكفى بس مو زوكربيرج.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cook, we've heard from businesses that Apple is canvassing the App Store to determine whether it can extract commissions from apps that have changed their business models in response to the pandemic. Businesses that relied on in-person interactions have moved online, and Apple is looking for its cut. Our staff has heard from some of the affected businesses. They say you're calling them up, demanding your 30%. Isn't this pandemic profiteering?
We would never do that, Mr. Chairman. The pandemic is a tragedy, and it's hurting Americans and many people from all around the world, and we would never take advantage of that. I believe the cases that you're talking about are cases where something has moved to a digital service, which technically does need to go through our commission model. But in both of the cases that I'm aware of, we are working with the developers to sort of zoom out and to give you some historical context on this, when we entered the App Store market, the cost of distributing software was 50 to 70%. And so we took the rate in half and to 30%, and we've held it in that same level over time or lowered it. It's now responsible for 2 million jobs across America, and 84% of the apps on the store are distributed for free, where 100% of the proceeds go to the developer. Only that 16% is subject to a commission of either 15 or 30%.
And school is about to start.
أول مرة ما حد يقاطع ويكمل الجواب.
Students will attend school online. They will rely on apps to talk to teachers, tutors, and virtual learning tools. Are these online learning tools next on Apple's? Are they on Apple's list to monetize?
They're not, Mr. Chairman. We're very proud of what we've done in education. We are serving that market in a significant way, including tons of donations. And we will work with the people that happen to move from a physical to a virtual world because of the pandemic. And we've done a lot to address COVID in general as a company. We've sourced and donated 30 million masks, turning our supply chain into something that would be great for America. We've designed a face shield, donated 10 million of those. We're donating significant amount of money across the U.S.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
Thank you.
We've heard that Apple is now trying to extract commissions from various apps that previously didn't pay you anything. You approved, we're told, the email app Hey.
حكي كله عن شنو انتم قاعد تسوون بالجائحة اللي صايرة الحين بالوباء اللي منتشر وكذي ومع الاب ستور شلون تاخذون الكوميشن مالكم يعني. والجواب كان على حسب انه والله احنا 80% و 60% تقريبا من البرامج فري والباقي هي اللي تتقسم ناخذ لنا 15 او 30% اللي ينطبق عليها مبدأ الجزئية من الربح اللي ياخذونه يعني. فهذا قاعد يرفع بالشركة إن إحنا والله سوينا وحطينا.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I would. Hey is in the store today, and we're happy that they're there. I believe that they have a version of their product is for free, and so they're not paying anything on that. I would also say that 30%, I hope you give me a time to explain this, or 15% is for lots of different services, from programming languages to compilers to 150,000 APIs. It has been an economic miracle to allow the person in their basement to start a company, a global company, and serve 175 countries in the world. It is amazing. Likely the highest job creator in the last decade.
I see.
قاعد يرفع بالاب ستور. باختصار اللي تو قاله ان احنا قاعدين نساعد شخص انه ممكن يكون قاعد بغرفة ببيتهم انه هو يأسس شركة عالمية يتم نشر برنامجه في 175 دولة. فال 15% او 30% اللي قاعد ناخذها قاعد تغطي الاي بي ايز اللي قاعدين نوفر له اياهم، لغات البرمجة، الشغل، البيئة، الستور، التسويق، هذا كله احنا قاعدين نشيله عنه ونوفر له البيئة هذه عشان يبلش يعني.
And you haven't changed the rules in such a way as to make apps pay when they weren't paying before.
يقول أنت ما غيرت سياستكم بعد.
I know of no case where we've done that. I'm sure we've made errors before. We get 100,000 different apps submitted a week, and we've got 1.7 million on the store. But across that period of time, we've never raised commissions from the first day the App Store went into effect back in 2008. We've only lowered them.
Well, thank you. I see my time has expired. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
Thank you for the question.
I now recognize the gentleman from North Dakota, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pichai, in 2015, Google announced that it would not allow third parties to buy YouTube ads via AdX.
That means that ad buys on YouTube are conducted only through Google demand-side products. Google justified this change by citing privacy and user experience. My understanding is that Google cited a concern that third-party digital ad participants would develop user profiles based on this viewing. It is also my understanding that even under
بس خل اطالع اسئلتكم لا شيء ما له معنى والله. مسكين هذا بتشاي يلعنه خيره. وين ايلون ماسك وساتيا ناديلا؟ هذول اخوي ما لهم شغل مثل ما قلنا ما لهم شغل بالاحتكار. وين هذول الاربعه باطشين بالعموم. ايلون ماسك شنو الاحتكار اللي عنده؟ ما خياس بويه عنده احتكار. عندك خبر ذي بيناقشون الاختراق الروسي للسوشيال ميديا بامريكا؟ لا هذه ناقشوها قبل، الحين هذا مو ما له شغل، هذا على الاحتكار على الخدمات والستورز والاشياء اللي هم قاعدين يبيعونها، ما لها علاقه بالاختراق الروسي. بس ترى قاعدين يقطون يعني قطات ترى عيني قاعد. استاذ ما رايك بتيم كوك كرئيس لشركه ابل؟ ممتاز جدا والله ممتاز جدا، يعني خير بديل حق ستيف جوبز، لان ستيف جوبز كان شوي باطش بالشركه، بس تيم كوك هو اللي سوى ابل اللي احنا قاعد نشوفه الحين، الاولى بالعالم، فلوس، دخل، مدخول، هذا كله الإدارة اللي بعد ستيف جوبز هي اللي سوت. فلما الحين يعني الشركة الأولى بالعالم. ردوا يزفونه.
You work with their ad tools to buy ads on their properties.
Well, I understand that, but the excuse is privacy, but the data doesn't disappear. You just have greater control over it, right?
Congressman, it's a service we provide to our users. We obviously want to make sure we protect the privacy of users there. We do monetize with ads. We give users a choice of either consuming it as a subscription service or using it with ads.
يجيبون طاري بيعهم بيانات للمستخدمين، والله تكلموا عنها وايد يعني يعني هي هذه فكرة اللي قاعدين في من الكونغرس قاعد يسألون جوجل ويسألون فيسبوك طريقة استحواذهم على البيانات شلون قاعدين يستغلونها
يعني. Congressman, we see robust choice for advertisers. There is several alternatives. There is obviously Facebook suite of products.
بحرين انت شنو تكفى؟ شنو 4 5 شقيتنا اخوي؟ تكفى لا تقعد تسولف كذي.
Competitors who have emerged, and this is why we have seen advertising costs decline by 40% in the last 10 years, and so we see dynamism in the marketplace. We are focused on it.
Yeah, but here's my issue, and there are policies that actually protect user privacy. Apple's encryption policy. Microsoft just came out on facial recognition policy. My concern is that your position are.
راح أعاقبك.
When we're using privacy, we're trying to use privacy. We're using privacy as a shield, but what we're really doing, and what your company is really doing, is using it as a cudgel to beat down the competition. When we're talking about privacy, it's a great word that people care about, but not when it's utilized to control more of the marketplace and squeeze.
معاقبة. ليش تكتب وايد؟ ما احنا فاهمين شنو قاعد تكتب. لا لازم تشوفونه.
Hopefully appreciate when we're trying to make it possible for people to donate to any number of from millions of different charities.
بيل كارسون يقول له انت تشوف انه هو عنصري يعني متعصب. No I don't. ليش انت ماشي مع جروب يشوفونه متعصب؟ توهق البطل.
And I would like a better source if we could get it. That is what we use today.
Well, that's breaking news. It's great to hear that you do recognize the infirmities in the Southern Poverty Law Center, and there are, I guess, Mr. Zuckerberg and Mr. Pachai's companies use them as well. Mr. Zuckerberg, do you believe that Dr. Ben Carson is an extremist?
No, Congressman.
And so why would you trust the people who think he is?
Congressman, I'm not aware of where we work with the organization that you're saying
Oh, the
Gentleman's
lawsuit.
time has
Okay.
expired.
That's
Now
helpful.
recognize the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I read Richard Hofstadter's The Paranoid Style in American Politics, so I suppose it's
بيع بيانات المستخدمين تكلوا عنها مع زوكربيرج جلسة استماع قديمة كانت موضوع نعم كامبريدج أناليتيكا مشكور على الستريمز اليومية حياك الله حبيبي ممكن يوم عن تطوير التطبيقات تكون مع صديقك المطور ظهر في فيديو سابق أبل سكيورتي إن شاء الله إذا قدرنا إن شاء الله امبارح كنت أتكلم عن أظافر خلال دقيقتين تحت انستغرام طلع الإعلان في فيديو أخوي تكلمت فيه عن
Fox News, Dan Bongino, Ben Shapiro, Fox News, Blue Lives Matter, and so on. So if Facebook is out there trying to repress conservative speech, they're doing a terrible job at it. And so I don't understand just the endless whining about how Facebook and Twitter are somehow discriminating against conservatives.
الحين هو هذا الكونغرسمان قاعد يبطش بالكونغرسمان الثانيين ما لهم شغل بالتكنولوجيا بس انه المهم فاخوي هذا يتكلمت فيها عن مال الاظافر تكلمت عن موضوع شلون الاعلان ويتبعونك في تلقى شلون الشركات تتجسس علينا وشغله كذي كان اسم المقطع اتوقع تقدر تشوفه اخوي نواف ليش ما يجيبون مسؤول بيوتيوب يجاوب على الاسئله المتعلقه بيوتيوب لان يوتيوب تابع لجوجل فجايبين رئيس جوجل فهو قاعد يتكلم عن الموضوع يعني كل الخدمات اللي تندرج تحت جوجل ليش ما يجيبون طاري اعلانات فيسبوك الفاضحه واللي اكثر من 22 فوق يطلع المحتوى بواحد اخر اخوي هذا شوف بالنسبه حق الاباحيه يعني امر مختلف تماما لان هم عندهم هذا شيء عادي مو مثل
and you're opposed to Citizens United, then you've got no problem. Citizens United is what gave corporations the power to go out and spend money. And if you don't like the way that some companies are spending money, then
واضح تعب عيونك والله تعبان عيوني ذابحتني ما شوي قاعد تعورني.
What's wrong with it? But the idea that electioneering is something you're opposed to just strikes me as completely inconsistent with the history and the facts. So I want to go to Mr. Cook.
اللي يعتذر عن الجلسة هذه منهم شنو مصيره لازم يشارك له كيف لا أخوي ما في كيفه مو كيفه
Is there any one of you that have thought about becoming a B Corp or a benefit corporation? Okay, I take it the answer is no there.
مجلس الشعب طالبك تيجي تتكلم غصبا عليك تيجي تتكلم.
Question that several members have talked to you about and you said sometimes it's 15%, sometimes it's 30%. Can you explain when it's 15 and when it's 30 and why it's 15 sometimes and why it's 30?
هذا subscription وهذا
Sure. Thank you for the question, Congressman. In 84% of the time it's 0. 16% of the time it's 15 or 30. In the case of it's 15 if it's in the second year of a subscription.
Okay, so you just graduate from your first year. You're taking no toll essentially. The second year it's 15, and then it's 30 after that. Is that right?
No. If it's a subscription product, it's 30% in the first year, and then it drops to 15 in the second year and every year thereafter.
I gotcha. Okay. Well, what troubles me is just what one businesswoman told me when I was looking at this, which is she said, I pay around 25% of my income to Uncle Sam, to the government, and then I pay 30% of my income to Apple, and so I get half of it, and it's very hard to make ends meet. And I just wonder, and look, all of you are in business and all of you are tremendously successful at what you do, and obviously this model has worked for you. But the question is, does this model actually squeeze out the next generation of entrepreneurs? And is it an unjust arrangement because you're, the 10,000-pound gorilla?
ترى كلها 30% يعني لا تقعدون تكبرون الموضوع انتوا.
I think so. In fact, keep in mind we've gone from 500 apps to 1.7 million, and so there's a lot of apps on the store, and a lot of people are making a very good living from it.
And you've said that. Forgive me for interrupting, but you've said that several times. But that, to me, might just underscore the monopoly nature of your business. That everybody's got to go through you. There's really no alternative. And so, I don't blame you for taking them all, but that doesn't mean that the terms that are being dictated are in fact fair terms. So how would you defend substantively that bargain?
that whether you look at it from a customer point of view or a developer point of view, there are enormous choices out there. If you're a developer, you can write for Android, you can write for Windows, you can write for Xbox or PlayStation. If you're a customer and you don't like the setup, the curated experience of the App Store, you can buy a Samsung.
Okay, I appreciate that. Forgive me for cutting you off. I got one more final question for Mr. Zuckerberg. You spend a lot of your time speaking to our conservative colleagues who have this persecution complex that you're somehow going after.
الوحيد اللي مسكين يعرف يجاوب لأنه فاهم شركته شلون تشتغل.
Civil rights groups that are engaged in a boycott because of what they
الباجي
think is the proliferation of hate speech and Holocaust revisions.
طالبين عشاء يا الحبيب. بيزوس.
Congressman, yes, I already have taken the time to meet with them. I think that the topics that they're pushing on are important.
اللي داش الديوانية وما يدري ايش السالفة. ها شباب شنو؟
These are issues around fighting hate that we have focused on for years, and we are committed to continue to improve the way that our company works and
الجدر الصفيح اللي قازر عليه والبتشاية البتشاية بتشاية ماكو شقنا.
Is the cancel culture mob dangerous?
It's something I'm not all the way up to speed on, but if you're talking about where somebody with a
بالنسبة للمطورين في كمية صياح وبكاء أشوفها على تويتر أكثر ما فهمه وأشوفها من حساب رينيه ريتشي. إي والله والله العظيم مسوين صايرين دراما كوينز بشكل ما يشون صاير.
Barry Weiss, who resigned as an editor at the New York Times.
مو عاجبك أبل روح أخذ لك دراما. هذا بالضبط اللي قاله تيم كوك. إذا أنت قاعد يقول لك إن في عندك نوعين من النظرة. لحظة اسكت أنت يا أخوي دقيقة. جوردن ما نبيك. ولا تشون سولف نحطك ميوت. قاعد يقول إن في وجهتين نظر. في وجهة نظر عميل وجهة نظر ديفولبر. أنت تقدر تطور برامج حق الأندرويد حق الأنظمة الثانية وحق أبل. أنا تليفوني ونظامي عندي هذا الستور تقدم تسوي عليه. أنت كيوزر مو عاجبك إن أنت تستخدم بس الأب ستور، عندك أجهزة ثانية روح اشتر سامسونج اشتر أي جهاز من شركات ثانية وعيش معاهم. فما أدري ليش جايين على شركة أبل إن أنت ليش تأخذ 30% كيفي. تخيل أنا عندي محل وحاط زاوية إن اللي بيأجر المحل آخذ نسبة من المبيعات اللي بيعها لأنه مأجر بالمحل عندي الطاولة هذه حاطة أغراضه راح آخذ منه 10%. كيفي. وهو معاجبه يروح محل ثاني أو يروح يفتح له محل لا يحط أغراضه بمحلي. شنو اللي قاعد يصير إنه أنت ليش تأخذ 10% لما الناس يحطون أغراضهم بمحلك؟ أنت ليش تأخذ 10%؟ هذا احتكار. ليش ما تفتح محل ثاني تخليه مفتوح حق الناس؟ ليش ما تخلي اللي يستخدمون ايفون ينزلون برامج من برا الاب ستور؟ ما بي كيف ما بي. مارك زوكربيرغ يلا نضحك مرة ثانية.
Free expression. I think that this is one of the fundamental democratic traditions that we have in our country, and it's how we
والله يصح
من
المساعدة.
number of issues, and our company is committed to doing what we can to
محمد الدوسري. والله دراما مسوين على الفاضي. جوجل كم تاخذ نسبة؟ طويل العمر كلهم كل الشركات تاخذ 30% من النسبة. أنا الحين مو بيوتيوب. لما تشتغل أنت مع يوتيوب أو تجيب لك هذه شركة MCN تمسك لك حسابك هذا ياخذون 30 70 40 60 ياخذون. لازم الشركة اللي تشتغل معها تاخذ. جوجل ياخذون 30% على البرامج المدفوعة. أمازون نفس الشيء. فيسبوك نفس الشيء على البرامج اللي شيء مدفوع ياخذون نسبة عليها. مو بس أبل. بس أبل مثل ما قال لك تيم كوك في عندهم هذه سالفة إذا كان اشتراك مو تدفع مرة واحدة. إذا كان اشتراك شهري أول سنة 30%، من السنة الثانية وانت ماشي 15% ياخذون. فنسبة الشخص اللي يسوي البرنامج الاشتراكات راح ياخذ 75%. صح 75 لا 85 آسف 85% بدل ما كان ياخذ.
I mean, Mr. Cook, there was a 1984 Super Bowl ad, and black and white, had this big brother type figure as the narrator saying over the screen to a bunch of these workers, looks like it was straight out of the Soviet Union, saying to a bunch of these workers as they're sort of marching along. Says one of the lines that the narrator uses is our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on the earth. And then the ad ends with this
يا ريت توضح سؤالك يعني منو يتكلم ما فهم صراحة.
busting the mob think. You remember that ad,
أعتقد
Mr.
جاي
Cook?
جيم كوك شكليا مو معقول شركة أبل ما عليها أي خلاف من الشباب.
Very well. It was Apple versus IBM at the time.
Yeah, but the point was, mob think, cancel culture, groupthink is not what this country's about. And we are seeing it play out every single, just take the sports world for goodness sake. In the last few weeks, Drew Brees had to bow to the mob simply because he suggested you should stand for the anthem. There was a football coach at Oklahoma State who wore the, quote, wrong T-shirt fishing with his boys. He got in all kinds of trouble. James Harden wears a mask saying, back the police, help the police, support the police. He gets attacked. Why don't we just let the First Amendment work? That's all we're asking. And you are 4 individuals who have so much influence. It would sure help if you're out there criticizing what the cancel culture mob is doing to this country. And people see it every single day. And I hope you'll do it. I hope you all said you disagree with it. I hope you'll really speak out against it and be fair with all viewpoints. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I recognize the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Jayapal.
مستحيل ملوت ترامب. هذه تبي زوكربيرج. الحين راحت على جوجل.
Many of us feel a deep urgency to protect independent journalism, and I wanted to talk
journalism والصحفيين هل تتوقع تنهار منصة الفيسبوك عن قريب لأن معظم المستخدمين بلشوا يخشوا من المنصة؟ يعني فيسبوك ما راح تطيح لأن عندها وايد أدوات يعني يبي لها وقت شوي. إذا تغير فكرة السوشيال ميديا والناس شلون تستخدم السوشيال ميديا يعني أكثر من تنتهي. يعني هم يضبطون لي برنامج وبعدين ياخذون نسبة ولا أنا أصمم متعة بعدين ياخذون نسبة. ممكن التوضيح؟ أي شوف أخوي بالنسبة حق اللي أنت قاعد تقوله هم يضبطون لي برنامج بعدين ياخذون نسبة ولا أنا أصمم وأتعب وبعدين ياخذون نسبة. ممكن توضيح. أنت تصمم وأنت تسوي كل شيء وتنزل الأب ستور وهم ياخذون 30% على شنو؟ على اللي قاعدين يقدمون لك إياه. الأدوات اللي أنت تستخدمها عشان تسوي وتصنع البرنامج أو اللعبة أو اللي أنت قاعد تسوي اللي أنت تقول أنا صمم متعبي. المنصة اللي أنت تبيع عليها. الستور اللي تعرض فيه. كذلك حقوق الملكية يحفظون لك إياها أنت كديفولبر إن تقدر تحفظ حقك إن ما في أحد يبوق الملكية مالتك. إذا أحد رفع عليك قضية أو صار شيء وتصير أيضا أبل هي اللي مثلا تدعمك في هذا الموضوع وتاخذ نصيب الهيت إنه والله هذا موجود في الأب ستور وإحنا رضينا إنه ينزل فلا تكلمون الديفولبر كلمونا إحنا. فهذه هم ياخذون منها نسبة كأنك رايح فندق. أنت لما تروح تقعد بفندق مو أنت اللي تغسل هدومك وهذا وكذي يعني هو الفندق المفروض يوفر لك هذا كله مقابل مبالغ زيادة. ما تبي كذي ممكن تاخذ شقة فندقية إنه يكون فيها مطبخ وفيها كذي عشان أنت تسوي هذا كله. ما تبي هذا كله تأجر لك شقة. فيعتمد أنت وين تبي تروح. فكل مكان راح ياخذ نسبة. أنا تعبت يا جماعة فخلنا نشوف آخر كم سؤال من عندكم ونروح ننام لأن خلاص بس وايد تعبت 2 ساعة وهم قاعدين 6 ساعات. لا بهدلوا أوكي بهدلوا. فآخر سؤال راح تنهار أخوي خاصة لا ما راح تنهار. الجلسة تتعلق بالتأكيد على احترام الشركات لعدم الاحتكار وجوردن هذا داش عرض. وايد داش عرض صح. بهدلة جماعية في كل مكان. الله ياخذ البكا هذا وكمية العصبية الغبية ذي. ما فهم شيء. سويفت كود للمطورين مجاني صحيح. تقصد شنو التعليم ولا بالمنصة؟ كذلك منصة الإكسكود. الإكسكود البرنامج تقدر تنزله بس إنه في اشتراك سنوي حق الأكاونتات $99. أوه قاعد يشرح حق منو هذا بتشاي؟ منو قاعد يحاكي اللي يقول له وخر خله.
These electronics would need to go to a middleman like Google Ads, which would then bid for ad space on an ad exchange. The problem is that Google controls all of these entities. So it's running the marketplace.
اوكي وايد زين عادي اصلا يعتبر فايده اللي ليش مسوين هذه البلوه. شكرا على التوضيح. والله قاعد اقول لك اخوي هي دراما، هم عايشين بالدراما، لازم يسوون لك دراما. والله انا مستانس على الله يسلمك حبيبي مشكور. ممكن يصير اي اجراء بعد الجلسه او قرار ولا راح يصير الهوى، كل هذا حكي فاضي بس شيلنا. نفس مجلس الامه عندنا وربعنا هذول الموجودين يطلع يقعد يصارخ وبستجوب الوزير وانتم الحراميه وطرنطن حق الانتخابات بعد شهرين بعدين خلاص كل حكي فاضي. يعني تكفى انت متوقع الحين ان الحين هذا الكونغرس والما ادري شنو راح يطيح جوجل وفيسبوك وهذا ويخلي الناس والله باقولنا ما راح نستخدم صال على النبي ان احنا قاعد طالع نضحك بس والله. اشتري سيريس 5 او انتظر سيريس 6. انت اخوي داش كذي داش هني كذي داش وايد داش بخشمي وايد غلط. بس يا جماعه خلاص باكر نلتقي ان شاء الله. باكر ندور لنا موضوع ثاني نسولف عنه لأن خلاص الموضوع هني.
For their own interests, instead brokers have to serve the clients, their clients. Does Google have a similar obligation to serve its clients, the businesses that are selling and buying?
والله قعدتكم ما تنمل يا جماعة، والله قعدتكم ما تنمل، بس قعدة وشوفة هذيل تنمل صراحة. بس خلاص وايد قاعد يقرقون وايد حكيهم ما منه فايدة، شقونا. شكرا لكم يا أصدقاء، بس خلاص نروح ننام الحين، نشوفكم يوم ثاني. ما حد سكتهم إلا تيم كوك ماسكينه على 30%. والله العظيم لو أنا بدال تيم كوك أنا رئيس أبل حاطيني شيء واقول والله العظيم انتم الحين داقين علي جايبيني ومقعديني 6 ساعات عشان تسولفون معي ليش تاخذ 30% من شلون. يلا والله هدم وامشي. مو عاجبكم انت اشي طالع انت ديفلوبر مو عاجبك 30% انا اخذها منك، قام اطلع برا روح سوي حق الاندرويد روح سوي. يلا لا تقعدوا تناقشون. يلا احتكار ما احتكار يلا طسوا يلا. بس والله زوكربيرج مسكين الله يعينه وهو راد البيت اليوم. بطشوا فيني. شوفكم على خير يا جماعة، نشوفكم إن شاء الله في أوقات أخرى. تصبحون على خير، فما الله.